If you have been in this web world or web development world, you might have heard about REST API, right? It doesn't matter which technology you're working with. Maybe you're working on Java, ASP.NET, maybe PHP, Ruby. You must have heard this term called as RESTful API. So what exactly this REST means, right? Is it very different from the web world, or is it very magical things? So we'll discuss about that in this video. And if you want to implement that, we have the entire series on that. So let's get started. Welcome back, aliens. I'm Navin Reddy from Telusko Learnings, and let's get started with REST API. So when I was learning Android for the first time, so now this example makes sense with Android. So when I was learning Android for the first time, I was thinking about making some application, because learning something is different, right? You can learn syntax of Android, you can learn basic programs, but then if you want to be efficient in that, you should make at least one app. Now that one app, maybe you can mimic some other app. Example, you can mimic a calculator, you can mimic a Facebook app. So I thought about, let's mimic an app. So I opened my mobile phone, and I saw different apps available in my mobile phone. So one was calculator. I thought everyone can do that. Let's do something else. I scrolled down. I thought about Facebook, but that will be a very big thing for me. So I went for something called as weather report app. Now, if you ever open a weather report app, it looks something like this, right? You have a different region you can select, and you will get the weather report of that, the temperature, the humidity, and all those things. So I thought about, let's mimic this app. But then, okay, so if you talk about this app, you have lots of data, right? And this data will be coming from, from where you will get this data. So you can give static data, right? You can just assign the data there and it will never change. Example, the temperature in Mumbai is 28 degrees Celsius. You can set it that way. The temperature in Delhi may be 31 degrees Celsius. You can set it that way. So it is permanent, right? But then weather keeps changing, right? According to the time. So let's say it is 6 p.m. now. So again, the weather will change. The climate or the temperature will change. If it is 12 noon, of course, the temperature will be different. So how can you change this data? Now, of course, right, your mobile phone doesn't have a sensor. Even if you have a sensor, you can sense the current climate, right? If I'm sitting in an AC room, so of course, I will get a current temperature. I will not get temperature outside of my house, or I will not get the temperature of Delhi. So how can I get all these details? So the idea is, what you have to do is, if you want all those reports, what you have to do is, all over the Mumbai, you have to put sensors. So just above the building, just put sensors, a weather sensor. Around the globe, everywhere you have to put sensor, because wherever you don't have a sensor, of course, you will not have a data. So if you want data about Delhi, you have to put in Delhi, you have to put a sensor. You have to go to US, you have to go to New York to get the New York climate, and you have to put your sensors everywhere. And that will cost you billions of dollars. Of course, right, you will not do that. So that means you need this data from somewhere. But question arises, from where? So what happens is, luckily, we are so fortunate that we already have some web services available on the internet. When I say web services, it simply means that there is some servers or some cloud somewhere in the world, and what you are doing, you are trying to access that cloud, right? Imagine I have a mobile phone here, and that's my app. That's like not actually my app, it is already app in my mobile phone. And on this side, you have a server, right? Now this server will give you a data. But then question arises, how can you generate this data? I mean, which technology you will use here? So basically, this is a normal web server. You can take any dynamic web server, not a static server, dynamic servers where you can generate data. So this is your dynamic server, and that's your mobile phone. So what you will do is, you will request your server. Now this server belongs to some company. Maybe there are different providers of weather reports, right? So what you can do is, these people who has all these sensors, or they have the data, they are ready to give you the data, right? And what you have to do is, you just have to call them. So there is a API. So what is API now? So API is something which will connect you and that server, right? So how would you know that, how many services that server provide, and how a server will know who are you, right? So if you want to access that data, we have to use APIs somewhere in between. But if you keep that API part aside, let's talk about server. What do you think? How will you generate data? Now, I'm from Java world, so I will take a Java example here. So you have to create a servlet, right? That's how we generate data, right? So you have to create a servlet. A client will send you a request, and then this servlet will give you the data. But then question arises, what servlet returns? Now, if you think about normal world, okay, now if you're not familiar with Java, that's fine. You can imagine a PHP application, you can imagine a Ruby application or ASP application. All these applications, they return something. Normally, that something is web page. Now, when I say web page, it will be a HTML page. Now, when you request from a browser, so let's say if you have a browser, that makes sense, right? Because browser is a blank thing and you will get the entire web page. But hold on, if you talk about my application, I already have a design, right? I don't want design, I just want data. So when I request to the servlet, now servlet should not return HTML page because I don't want HTML page, right? And even if I get HTML page, how will I pass it? So what I will ask is, hey servlet, I don't want a data. I don't want a page, I want data. Servlet will say, okay, you want data. I will give you data in maybe 2 formats. You will get data either in JSON format or XML format. Now you might be thinking, why JSON, why XML? It's because whenever you return some data, data should have some structure, right? You cannot just randomly send any data. So when you send data, it will be a complex data. You have to follow a particular structure. Now, if you follow XML, in XML we have this hierarchical structure, right? So in XML we have this hierarchical structure where you can have a country name. Inside the country you'll be having city name. Inside city you'll be having different values, right? We have humidity level, we have temperature, so you'll be having all these values, right? So you can return XML format, but the problem is there are lots of people, they don't like XML, especially I don't like XML. But JSON is something you can actually work with, because if you know JavaScript, in JavaScript we create array objects, so those are basically your JSON objects, right? So what we can do is, we can, instead of using XML, we can also use JSON. Now again, you can use XML, you can use JSON, right? So your servlet returns you XML or JSON format, and your job is done, right? You are getting data. But the only thing is, when you talk about this data, if you talk about this servlet, it creates lots of overhead, right? Right, we have a servlet technology where you have to create a post request. You have to write do get, do post, request object, response object, a bulky thing, right? So to replace this, we have a simple solution, and that simple solution is using REST API in any technology, maybe Java, PHP. So REST says, if you want to return some data, what if you can simply create an object of that on the server side and just return the object itself? Not object, but the values of the object, right? So you have an object, you want to send the state of an object, right? You don't want to send the object, but the state of an object. Imagine if I want to send a weather report, something like this. You have a city name, then you have a temperature, then you have humidity level. So you will send all this data to the client side, right? So if you can create an object of this, you can simply send an object in JSON format or XML format, right? So that will be converting an object into a state, right? So that is called as representational state. You're transferring the state, right? So you're sending the state of an object. That's what you call as REST, which is representational state transfer. So what you're sending is not object, but the state of an object. Now that state of an object can be sent using JSON or XML. So that's the first thing. Then what if, so think about this web world, right? What we do, doesn't matter which website you're working with, with what requirement you have, we do one simple thing. We do CRUD operations, right? We create the resource, we read the resource, we update the resource, and we delete the resource. Now, okay, now if you observed, I said resource, right? Now why resource? Is because in this world of technology, we want something from the server, right? So the example, if I want to add 2 numbers, what I will say, hey server, just add these 2 numbers for me. 2 plus 2, it will give me 4. So when you send a request, so if you send a normal HTTP request, it looks something like this, right? We have http://www.telusko.com. Let's refer my website, and then .com. If you want to add 2 numbers, you will say add, and then you will give a question mark, which will send the values. So you will say question mark, and then query parameters, right? You have to send question mark and then values. Instead of that, what if you can send the value something like this? Okay, instead of going for add, what will make more sense is you're fetching some data. Example, if you go to my website, we have this awesome feature, you can get questions, right? So if I say HTTP, the website name /questions/Java. Now this will make more sense instead of saying questions, question mark, subject equal to Java, right? It looks more like a resource. So what you are fetching is actually a resource, right? So instead of thinking that you have a server where you're doing some processing, instead of thinking like that, what you can think about is you are fetching data as it is. As a client, you don't even know what is happening on the server. What you know is you are getting your resource back. And to do that CRUD, which is create, read, update, and delete, we can actually use HTTP methods, right? In HTTP, we have post method, we have put method, we have what we have else? We have get method, and we have delete, right? So using these 4 methods of HTTP, we can achieve our code operation. And that's how your REST API works. Again, before REST, we were also having SOAP request, which is SOAP web services. But nowadays, everyone uses RESTful APIs. In fact, all the companies, they are moving from SOAP to REST. But then question arises, how can you implement REST? So we have 2 choices. We have multiple choice. One of the famous implementation for REST is Jersey. And the second one, which I love, is Spring implementation of Jersey, or Spring implementation of RESTful API. So in this course, we'll be focusing on both. We'll see some examples on Jersey, and most of the examples we'll see on Spring REST. So I hope you liked this video. You got something about the REST API. Again, we'll talk about the implementation in the subsequent videos. We have talked about REST API, which is also RESTful web services, and it is booming everywhere. So what exactly we are going to start with? What type of example we are going to start? Again, we'll be going for a complex example once you go ahead, but initially we'll be talking about aliens. So if you want to understand REST API, to understand the overall picture, let's talk about REST API with an example, which is one of my favorite examples, called as aliens. See, we all are aliens, right? Of course, you can treat yourself as human in this case. So when I say alien, you can imagine yourself as human. So what is alien? Alien is someone who belongs to this software world, or the virtual world, what you say. And everyone in this virtual world, maybe they are very technical in one of the field, maybe database field, or programming field, or maybe testing field, or the hacking field. So all these are the aliens, right? And every field, so let's say if I'm a programmer, if I'm a Java programmer, so I'll be having some points in that. Example, when I start with Java as a fresher, I'll be having maybe 2 or 3 points. The moment I get experience, I get 10 points, 50 points. Maybe as experience of 6 years now, I can say I got 60 points out of 100 in Java. Maybe you might be having more or less, doesn't matter. So we all are aliens. So we have a name, we have an ID, and we have points. So if you want to create a class of this is how your class will look like, right? You'll be having a simple class called as alien, in which you'll be having 3 variables, alien ID, then you have a name and a points, right? So if I create object of the first alien, let's say the first alien name is Naveen itself, I will say alien ID 101 or name Naveen, and then the points would be, let's say, 60. So that's my value. Let's say if you have one more object, so now you have 2 or 3 objects, right? Now, if you want to send this data on the client side, you have to convert this data into XML or JSON. Again, how will you do that? That's a different thing. We'll be saying in the practical session. But I want to send this data in XML format. Even before sending this data, we have to accept the request, right? And to accept the request, first you have to create the application. Now, question arises, how will you create an application for REST API? Again, the prerequisite for this would be you have to understand Maven, because using Maven you will be building this project, and luckily I have a video on that as well on YouTube. So first you have to understand how Maven works. Second, we have to create a Jersey project. Now, why Jersey? It's because REST is just a concept, right? And to implement that, we need some implementation. You can use Jersey, or we can use Spring, as we had discussed in the earlier video. So you can use one of this. Now, if you are using Jersey, of course, you have to use Jersey libraries. You have to create a project structure which will be working with Jersey. Now, you might be thinking, okay, we have to create that structure. Don't worry. We have a Maven video, right? And in the Maven, what you can do is you can ask Maven, hey, Maven, can you just give me a Jersey project? Maven will say, okay, you got your Jersey project there. So don't have to worry about the project creation. It will be taken care by Maven. Now, once you got your project, there will be some project structure, there will be some dependencies which you have to add. No, you don't have to add any dependencies, right? Because Jersey will be given by Maven. But then we have to create some resources, right? As we have discussed, in REST API, we have to create a resource. Alien is our resource, right? But then alien is simply a Pojo class, right? I mean, what is Pojo? It's a plain old Java object. So this is a plain old Java object. What we want is when you send a request, there should be someone there who will respond, who will send you a response. Now, how will you do that? Again, if you're thinking in servlet technology, in servlet we have to create a class, then we have to extend our class with the help of HTTP servlet. Do we have to do that here? Not exactly. We don't have to do all those things here. In fact, I believe that REST API is much simpler than learning server technology. And you might be knowing about server technology. Even if you don't, that's okay. Because anyway, learning REST is easier than learning servlet. So if you know the REST API thing there, so using REST API, we can send a request and you will get the response. So there should be someone who will accept your request and who will send your response. So once we have seen the theory about REST API, let's try to implement that. But then before implementation, of course, we should be knowing which tool we are going to use, right? So in this video, we'll discuss about the tools we require. So welcome back, aliens. I'm Navin Reddy, and let's get started. So what we are going to do now is we'll try to understand what are the tools we require. And as you can see, I have already opened Eclipse here. Now question arises, which are the available options you have? Again, you can go with any IDE which you prefer. Maybe if you are in love with NetBeans, if you're in love with IntelliJ, you can go with that. The same example which we are doing here will work there as well, right? So we have Eclipse, we have NetBeans, we have IntelliJ. So if you can just go to the website, so just search for Eclipse download. It will take you to the website and you can download the Eclipse from here, right? So if you can search for Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers. And yeah, so you have to make sure that when you download Eclipse, you have to make sure that you are going for Java EE version. It's because when you talk about Neon itself, Neon has multiple versions. As you can see, we have Java developers, we have Java EE developers. The difference here would be, since we want to work with REST API, which is a part of web development, so we need some servers, right? And to add those servers, this Java EE developers version will give you the option. So we'll go with this one, which is Java EE developers, and depending upon which platform you are working with, maybe Windows, Mac, or Linux, you can download particular version. Now, once you download it, you just have to unzip it and you are good to go. So once you open Eclipse, this is how it looks like. So this is how your Eclipse looks like. Now, once you have, once you have downloaded the Eclipse, and when you open the Eclipse, it will ask you for the workspace. You can mention any folder which you like. I just mentioned the workspace as YouTube, and I'm good to go. And then we have to also make sure that you add a server. Now again, I have a separate video on this on YouTube. Just search for Telusko, Eclipse, and Tomcat. So it will give you the video where you can watch how do you connect this Tomcat with Eclipse. But still, if you want to check it out, so what I will do is I will just delete this part. I mean, okay, what you can do is it will not give you this option there. So it will not be having this Tomcat 8 by default. So you have to click on this. So there will be option of no server available. Click here. So just click on that. So same thing I can get here. Right click new and server. Now most of the time, you don't get this server tab here. So for that, you have to make sure that you are in Java EE perspective. If you're not there, just click on this button, which is perspective, and select Java EE. Now luckily for my machine, it is by default. In your machine also it will be by default, but in case if it is not there, just make sure that you are selecting a Java EE perspective, and then go to window, show view. There is an option of servers. Now when you click on this servers, it will give you this window, okay, the current window which you are working with. So right click and say new, click on server. And now out of all these servers, you can see when you open that, it will give you list of servers here. And depending upon what type of plugins you have installed in Eclipse, this is not the new Eclipse I'm using. I'm using this Eclipse from a long time. So I'm getting option of Red Hat and all those things. So if I open Eclipse, Apache, you can see we can have Tomcat 8 version, but unfortunately, okay, before doing all those things, you have to download Tomcat as well. So you have to go to Google and download Tomcat, and then you can select and say next. It will ask you for the browse, where is the folder, just select that and you're good to go. Okay, so once you got Tomcat, once you got Eclipse, it's time to create a project. Now, to work with this project, what we will be doing is we'll be creating a Maven project. Now, for this, of course, you should be knowing about Maven. And if you have not seen that, make sure that you have seen my Maven video. It's there on YouTube. So search for Telusko Maven. You will get some idea how to get a Maven project. But if you already know that, that's great. So say new and go for others. And let's say I want to go for a Maven project and say next. We'll say next. Now, what type of archetype I have to use here? Now, Maven is famous for those archetypes, right? In fact, if you want to create different kind of project, Maven will say, okay, you want a project, I will give you the project, don't worry. So I will go to filter. Now I know that I want to build a Jersey project. Now why Jersey? Because to implement REST, we have different implementation, right? And Jersey project is one of the implementation. Again, we'll be doing this in 2 steps. I mean, first we'll focus on Jersey, and then we'll also see how to do REST API using Spring MVC. So here, what I will do is I will search for Jersey, and you can see we have lots of archetypes already available for Jersey. Okay, as you can see, we are getting lots of options here. But it is possible that these options are not available in your machine. Okay, it is possible. So in that scenario, what you can do is, okay, when you search for this, it may happen that your Maven is not able to interact with the internet. Okay, it may happen. In that scenario, what you can do is, first you have to make sure, go to Eclipse, go to preference, and in fact, it was not working for me, so I did some changes. So go to Maven, click on Maven here, and you have to select this 4 text. So you have to make this 4 text. So you have to say download archetype source, download archetype documentation, download repository index. I mean, this is the main thing. And then update Maven project on startup. So select all these things, click on OK, and you have to make sure that those 4 ticks are there. And now create a project. It should be working. So I will say again a Maven project. I will say Maven project, and then I will say next. And I know, I mean, you know, right? We have to search for Jersey here. Okay, we'll search for Jersey, and okay, so it is coming very fast on my machine because I've already done this in my machine. If you're doing this for the first time, it may take some time. So I want to go for a web project, right? So I will say Jersey quick start web project, web app, and click on next. Now it will ask you for the group ID, as you know, Maven. So we'll say com.telusko, and the artifact ID for me is, let's say, demo rest. So that's my web application which I'm working here. Once you do that, just click on OK, and your job is done. Can you see that? You got your Jersey project. And if I expand that, not this our tab, if I expand this project, we got SRC, and we got a Java folder. Inside the Java folder, we have COM, we have Telusko. Okay, this project is still in building phase. As you can see, they are still creating this project, and this project is coming from the internet. As you can see, it is downloading everything here. Okay, so it is downloading the Jersey dependencies, whatever we need. And that's the beauty about Maven, you know. If you are doing this in a normal project, you have to add all the Java files by yourself. You have to you have to do some settings by yourself, right? Thanks to Maven, it will give you the project. So yeah, that's how you create a project. In the next video, we'll talk about how we can write our first code in Jersey, and let's do some settings there. So that's it, guys. That's our project building, and as you can see, the project is already built here. I was supposed to stop this video, but then it is already built. Let's expand this Java resources. As you can see, okay, let's have a look on these things. Okay, so let's expand this, and okay, where's that? So if I'm expanding it, it is taking some time because it is downloading the source code, as we have checked everything. So let me just click on that once again. It is taking some time. As you can see, by the time it gets open, you can focus on your POM XML file, which is the most important file for your any Maven project, right? So if I double click that, and my machine is working very slow now, as you can see, because it is downloading lots of things from the internet, and it makes your system very slow. And luckily I got a good machine. Otherwise, if you are working on normal machine, it does take lots of time. Okay, so yeah, so we'll talk about this. We'll see how this works. So as you can see, we got this project here. It's working slow. Let me just check it out here, what's going on behind the scene. Okay, so it's taking some time. So what I will do is I will stop the video here. In the next video, we'll discuss how this thing actually works. So now let's try to understand this project structure. Now, if you remember, in the last video, we have talked about how to create a Jersey project, and we have done that, right? You can see we got this project here. Now, this is a simple web project based on Maven. And again, if you open this POM XML file, you'll be getting all this Jersey dependency there. Now, the most important thing is, let's try to understand this structure here. So if you expand this SRC folder, and if you expand this main, and if you have ever worked on servlet.jsp before, you know this structure, right? So we have this Java folder where you'll be having all your Java files, of course, right? When you talk about servlets, when you talk about your modular classes, everything will belong to this Java folder. And all your pages, like example, JSP pages, then you'll be having your JavaScript pages will belong to this this web app. And if you expand this web app, we already have a index.jsp. Now you might be thinking this is a REST project, right, where you will return data in a text format or JSON format. Why do you even need this index.jsp? I guess when you create this project in a Jersey format, they give you this page just to test your application if everything is working or fine or not. This is not exactly what you will be using. So this is just a test file for you. So if you open that, you can see it says the resources you will find everywhere. You will find it my resources, and it belongs to web API. Again, those are things are there, and this is only for testing, okay? And then it prints project Jersey website and all those things. But if you can see, we are getting an exception. We are getting some error here. It says the superclass java x.servlet.http.servlet HTTP servlet is not found. The problem here is, whenever you create a web project, you have to make sure that you have Tomcat assigned or any web server assigned here. So in the target runtime, you have to tick this. You have to say checkmark, which is Apache Tomcat 8.0 target connected. And now if you click on OK, you can see the error is gone. So you have to make sure that you are assigning some web server to your project so that it will understand that it will get that HTTP servlet class. Now everything seems good. So let's try to run this application. Oh, before running, I have just one more thing. If you open this Java folder, inside we have com folder, we have the entire package list here, right? We got demo rest, and inside that we have a file, a Java file called as my resources. Now inside this my resource, you can see we have a method called as get it. Okay, so we have get it, which has two things, which is @get, @produces. What it means, that we'll talk about this later in detail. Time in, we don't want that. Let's keep it there. So the thing is, if I run this application, if I click on this button, as you can see, you will be getting this page. When you click on this web resource, you will be getting something, right? So even before clicking on that, what I will do is I will just focus here. I want to print got it. Doesn't matter where I print it, maybe in the console or maybe in the page. So let's try to understand how that works. Now to run this application, what I will do is I will right click this. I will say run on server. So I already have a Tomcat server in the running state. So if I click on that, it will restart my server, of course. And if you run this, okay. Now you got this page, right? That means everything is working. Now that's what you say, a delusion. Now if you open this console, you can see we have an error. Doesn't matter if you got the output, but still we got an error, right? The error is injection manager factory was not found. Again, due to some update, they have made some changes. So this thing is not working in the new version. So what I will do is I will make some changes here. So in my POM XML file, if you just go down, you can see we have Jersey version, which is 2.26-B06. You have to make sure that you make it as B03. Okay, it is working in this version. I guess there's some problem with the new version. So if I say save, it will change my resources. If I expand this Java resources and if I expand libraries inside which you have Maven dependencies, you can see the Jersey now changed to 03. I guess it will work now. Let's run this once again. Okay, let me just restart my thing. Where is my server? It's here, and let's right click and restart. I hope it will work this time. So it's running. As you can see, there is no problem now. There is no error. And let's get back there. And if I say enter, okay, you got the same output. In fact, I don't want this output to be used in the internal browser. I hate internal browser of Eclipse. I want to use my own browser. I will use Firefox. So just go to Window, go to web browser and click on Firefox. Now, if you go to Firefox, again, next time when you run this, it will open in Firefox. But this time, I will open the Firefox by myself. And I will say enter. Oh, what was that? Ignore that. Let me just copy this. I guess that this is some number I copied from somewhere. Let's say enter. Not here. What's happening? Okay, so if I go to browser, you can see we are getting this page. Now, of course, when you click on this, it will call for resource. But let me just type it by myself. I will say my resource. And if I say enter, oh, we got an error. I was expecting got it, right, which is text which should have printed. Maybe it is printing on console. Let's go back to console. Let's see if you got it there. Oh, it's not there. So that means it is not able to find the resource. Why it is not able to find the resource? To understand that, let me just go to one of the most important file in your project, which is, if you go to web INF, you have web XML file. Now this is the most important file. As you can see, it says to work with Jersey, this is the class which you have to use. This is your servlet container. So whenever you send any request, this is the class which will handle your request for Jersey. But hold on, it will accept only those requests which are coming with this URL, which is web API/. That means when you request for my resource, you have to also mention web API/my resource. And now when you run this, can you see that we got it, right? So that's how your REST thing works. Again, this is a simple text, okay? This is not a page. This is a simple text. Again, you can type it here in the address bar, or what we could have done is we can simply say resource or Jersey resource, and it sends the request to the same thing. And that's why I've not clicked on that before. I wanted to show you how to access your resources with the help of web API. Again, if you can change that from your URL pattern, if you remove this, it will work perfectly fine. If you remove from here, you don't have to put web API there, right? So that's how your first web service works. So let me just repeat. No, we have not done any changes yet. We are working with the same project which Jersey gives you, because I want to make you understand what the basics of Jersey here, so that we can continue in an easy pace. Okay, so what is happening here? So when you send a request from our resource, this is a path which is linking. So when you say, when you go to your browser, what was that? Let me just remove that. Yeah, so when you go to your browser, when you send my resource request, the request goes to web XML file, and it sends the request to the servlet container, which says I have to search for this path, my resource. And once you get this path connected, of course you have to use this class, inside which you have only one method called as getIt, and on that we are mentioning get. Now what is this get? Get specifies whenever you send a get request, this is the method I want to access. Is it a get request? As of now, by default, all the requests are get, right? So to specify it's a get request, we are saying get. Now what is produce? Again, we'll talk about this produce in the next video, but then we are printing got it, right? Which is returning, and it is going on the page. So yeah, that's it. This is our first Jersey project. So that's it from this video. In the next video, we'll do some changes and we'll make our own stuff. Now let's try to create our own resource. Now if you can see, what we have done here is we have used my resource, right? And when you request for my resource, we are getting got it. But to make you, if you want to create your own resource now, what I will do is, first of all, I will create a model object, because see, it's always better to return an object format, right? Because that's what REST actually means, which is representational state transfer. So you are transferring the state of an object. So for that, you need an object. And to get an object, first of all, we have to create a class, right? So let's create a class here, and we'll go for the alien, because I love aliens. And I'll click on finish. Okay, just if you don't know what is alien means, I call all my IT trainees or students or colleagues as aliens, because we live in virtual world, right? We don't live in real world. So yeah, so we have alien here, and then I got, let me just use some variables here. So again, we'll go for some typical examples. So we'll go for private string name. Every alien will be having a name, and every alien will be having some points. Maybe, okay, when I say points, it means for a particular, so let's say if I'm good at Java, so I'm an alien, I'll be having some points, right? Maybe 50 points out of 100, maybe 80 points out of 100, maybe 10 points out of 100. So every alien will have a name and a point. And for this, what I will do is I will say getters and setters. We'll say source generate getters and setters. Let's select all and click on OK. So we got our class here, right? This is our simple Pojo, what you can call it as. Now what I want is, when I request for aliens, so let's say if anyone says, hey, I want aliens, I want to return the objects of aliens, maybe 1 or 2 objects, whatever you want to return. Initially we'll return only 1, and let's see how to return multiple objects. And if you want to return that, in which format you'll be returning that? That's one of the question. So what I will do here is, let me create our own resource. Again, normally when you work on server application, maybe some other framework like Spring, we always create a control, right? Because normally we follow MVC pattern there. Now here, we are not following MVC pattern. What we are trying to achieve is, when you send a request, you want a response as a JSON format or XML format, right? Now we can call it as my own resource, so we can do it at here itself. But instead of instead of changing the existing code, what I would do is I will create my own resource. And now it's not that difficult to do that, right? We'll create a new resource, we'll say new class, and I will call this as alien resources. Again, you could we can go with alien controller, or maybe only some other name, but then this makes more sense, right? You should always get a project which you should always use a name in the project which actually makes some sense. So I will say alien resource, which will return the alien object. Now since you want it to work with a request, of course you have to use one of our favorite annotations. Now if you remember in the earlier example where we have talked about this one, which is your my resource. So we have worked on my resource, and my resource says, first of all, let me just close all this extra thing. So this my resource having an annotation which is at path, right? This defines in which at what request you have to call this. So I will say at path, I will say control space. So whenever I send this request with a URL, okay, so I will say whenever I call for aliens, I want to call this resource, right? But again, we need some method to work with it, right? So I will create a method here. Okay, let me just say method name as, okay. So I will say method name, okay, so I'll say public. I will say method name as, maybe it will return, okay, we'll say get alien, but then it will return an alien object, right? So we'll say alien, and the method name would be, okay, so the method name would be get alien. Now this get alien will give you an alien, a single alien, right? Okay, so we have to create alien object. We'll say alien A1. Again, you can go with any name, doesn't matter. We'll say new alien, and let's assign some values there. So I will say A1 dot set name. I will assign the name of myself. I will say Naveen, and I will say A1 dot set points. I will assign the points to myself. Let's say I'm assigning a point 60 out of 100. Okay, so I want to return this object, and the way you can do that is by simply saying return A1, and that's it. Your job is done here. But hold on. How this method will be called? Will it be called automatically? I don't think so, but still let's run this code and let's see what's the error we are getting, because that's how you understand what's going wrong, right? So let me restart my server, and let's get back to my browser, which is Firefox here, and instead of calling resources this time, I will be calling /aliens. That's how my request is. And if I say enter, oh, we got an error. It says 404, and anything on the console, nothing much. As you can see, we are not getting any error here. But here is the issue. It is giving you a warning. It says resources alien it has no resources, no sub methods, neither sub resource. Okay, it's simply saying that whenever you use resources, you have to make sure that you create a method which returns something. So here what we'll do is I will say this will be called whenever you request for get request. So whenever you send a get request, then only you should call this aliens. Okay, that sounds good. And I will do one more thing just to verify if this is getting called or not. So I will say get alien called, just to make sure that it is getting called, right? So you can also maintain a log file, but let's say this println will do. Let's run this application once more. I will say click on this and run on server, enter and enter. Okay, now if I go back to my browser and I will request for the same thing, aliens. Okay, this time we got a different error. Can you see that? We are not getting 404 anymore. We are getting 500. That means when you go back here, it says get alien call. That's perfect. Everything is working perfectly. But then it says message body writer not found. Okay, so what you have to do is whenever you return something, you have to specify what type of data you're returning. So you have to show your intention, right? So I will say @produces. Okay, @produces, you have to mention what it produces. So we'll say produces, and in this we will mention a bracket, square bracket. Now there are some constants we can use. We can say media, or we can simply say application JSON. So we have different, or not JSON, application underscore XML, but that belongs to a class which is called as media type dot, which is application XML. So we'll say application underscore X, or what's happening, XML. right? So you have to mention media type dot XML application XML. Let me import the package. So that's your media type. Okay, now I guess it will return what we are expecting here. It says application underscore. Oh, I've made a mistake here. It should be in capital letters. Is it capital? Yes, it is capital. So let's go back to my XML. It's here, this one. Yeah, and this should work now. Let's try. Okay, when you say it should work, sometimes it doesn't work, okay, because of something is missing. Let's try this and let's run this application. Let's get back to our browser, which is here, and the same request. Oh, again, we are getting 500. It says get called. Now, what is wrong? The thing is, whenever you send a request, I mean, alien is ready to get converted, but then, you know, when you talk about conversion, this object will be returned in XML format, right? So your alien should know that which is the root element, because in XML we have this hierarchy structure, right? We have root element, then we have element inside that, and we have element inside that. So what I want is this alien should be the root element, and then this name and point should be elements inside that. And to achieve that, we have to use one of the annotation called as @XML root. What is that? XML root element. So we have to make sure that we are using this annotation because I want to return a XML file. Okay, now I think it should work. Let me restart the server. From a long time I'm saying this will work, but let's try once again. Let me go back to my browser and let's say enter. Oh, can you see that it is working? We got our XML data, and you can see it's so beautiful. We got this alien name, alien tag here inside. This is your root element, by the way. And then we are saying name and points, right? So this is how you create your own resource. And I mean, can you see that it's not that difficult? I don't know why people think REST API is damn difficult. You can see it is so simple. It is easier than servlets, I guess. You know, we just have to create a method and just return the resource, create an object and return it. Again, you might be thinking we are creating our own resource, the own object. What if you want to fetch from database? We can do that very easily. Just write a JDBC code and fetch it from there. Or maybe you can use Hibernate framework here. Return the object, get the object from the database and return it. I mean, it's that simple. Okay, nothing to do extra. But maybe in future we'll talk about how do we merge Spring, JPA, and REST together. So by the time this is how it works. Let's keep it simple now. We have just created the alien class. On top of that, we have written @XML root element. To define that, we are returning this in XML format, and we are creating this alien resource where you are creating a method called as getAlien with annotation get because we are sending a get request. @produces to mention that what we are producing it, and we got this object, we are returning that object, and everything is so simple. So that's it from this video. In the next video, we'll discuss how do we return multiple objects, right? And yeah, that's it. So in the last video, we have seen how to return this list, right? In fact, let me just run this code once again just to show you what we have done in the last session. So let me just run it as run on server. Let's say next and click on finish. So by the time it runs, it's already in running state. Let me just say, okay, demo REST. We have to mention web API, if you remember, right? And then we have to request for the aliens. I will say aliens, and you can see we are getting one alien. What I'm expecting now is it should return multiple aliens, right? So let's say if I create one more object here. So the way we have Naveen here, and let me just copy that. Let's paste it here. And this time we'll go for A2, and let's assign this is A2 and A2. Let's go for a different name. Let's say the name is Arati here, and let's say the value is, let's say 70. So we got Naveen 60 points, Arati 70 points. And now I want to return a list. So what I will do here is I will say list of alien. I will say aliens equal to, and I will say new array list, or maybe I can simply say arrays dot as list. We do have these two objects, right? So we can say A1 comma A2, and we got our list. Let me import the package for list, and let me just do that. Oh, what's happening? It is building automatically. Let's say Control-Shift-O. And yeah, we got our list, right? Now, once we got a list, let's return a list. So instead of returning a A1, Okay, I should be taking this window somewhere down, right? It will be better. At least I will not be getting that pop-up every time. Okay, so instead of returning A1, I want to return aliens, right? So I want to return a list of aliens, but the problem is here also we have to mention it is a list of alien, right? And now everything is set up. I think it will work now. Okay, so I have to restart my server. Let me just do that. And I don't have a server tab here. Let's say, oh, it's getting restarted automatically. Let's go back to Firefox. And now if I say aliens, now that makes sense, right? You can see we are fetching aliens and we got two aliens. We got alien and we got alien. So we got the first alien as Naveen, second alien as Aarti. And that's the beauty about XML, right? So we are only seeing now how to fetch list of aliens. But what about if you want to fetch only one object now? Maybe I don't want to fetch all the aliens, and the better name for this would be get aliens. Okay, so let's say I don't want to fetch the all the aliens. I want to be very specific now. I want to fetch the first alien with name Naveen. I want to fetch an alien with name Aarti. Something like this. If I say aliens slash Naveen, it should return Naveen. If I say Aarti, it should return Aarti, but it's not working now. How exactly it will work, that we'll see in the coming video. We'll also see how to create a resource. I want to create a new resource. And there's one more thing, normally what happens is you get this data from the database. And as you can see, we are creating our own resource here statically. So we'll also see how to create a separate class which will give me this object. Maybe a demo, a dummy database, or maybe a mock database we can call it as. So yeah, we'll see that in the coming videos. In the last session, we have talked about resources. How do you fetch resources here, right? So we were returning the list of aliens, right? So we created these two aliens here. And the moment someone sends you a request for aliens, you will return a list of aliens where you will return these two aliens, right? And then we have also discussed, we have talked about this. If normally when you return data, of course, the data will be coming from database, right? What we are doing here is we are returning data by ourselves by creating the static resource. And that's not a good practice now. So what we should be doing here is we should be creating a separate class which will be dealing with database. And of course, we have to fetch data from database, but in fact, we can mock it up, right? We can create a separate class which will return data to us. Again, we can imagine that that class is connecting with database. We don't care about that. We are not concerned about which database we are working with. What we are concerned is this data should be coming from database. And to mock it up, what I will do is I will create a separate class now, and I will name that class as, okay, let's create a class, and we can call this class as something alien. So we'll say alien what? Normally, if you are coming from web development, we normally refer to our class name as DAO, right? So a class which deals with database is called as DAO. But then in REST API, instead of calling it as DAO, we can use a good name called as repository. Again, you can imagine you can still use DAO. That's fine. You can use any class name, doesn't matter. But then repository sounds good because you might be fetching data from database, maybe from some files, maybe from network. You're fetching data from a repository, right? Again, having said that, you can use any class name, doesn't matter. Now, so the class name which I'm using here is alien repository, and this alien repository will work with certain methods. Now, again, there's one more reason why I have taken this name as alien repository. You will understand this once we start with Spring REST. So after this Jersey, we'll be talking about Spring REST, where we will implement the same thing. There, this alien repository will make more sense, right? So time in, let's say we have a class name as alien repository. You can take any class name the way you want. Okay, so we have this class, right? And this class will work with a database. Now, when you talk about resource, as a user, you can fetch all the resource. You can fetch all the aliens in the database. You can save a new alien. Maybe you want to add a new alien object. Maybe you want to fetch one particular alien. Maybe you want to update one particular alien. So you will do all those operations with this alien repository, right? So this alien repository need to have all the methods, right? So what I will do is I will, first of all, let me create a array, okay, maybe a list, and I will use that list will be accessed by all the objects. Okay, now how do I do that? So what I will do is I will simply create a list of objects here. So I will say list of aliens, and I will name this alien as, okay, let me just name this as aliens equal to, okay, what next? Now we have to say new array list. We have to create the object as well, right? In fact, we can create this object somewhere else. So let's say we are declaring the object here. Now, once you have declared it, we need a constructor where you will create the object of it. So I will say public alien repository, where you will create an object of that. So we'll say alien repository, and now here we will create an object of aliens, right? And that's how you do it. That's one of the advantage of using constructors. We can initialize our variables, and then so we have initialized our reference variable now, which is aliens in this case. Now I want to have some static data. Okay, of course you can imagine this data is coming from database, but then we don't really, I mean, we are not really creating a database here, right? So let's mock it up. So what I will do is the thing which you are doing here, these aliens, we will cut this part and let's put it here in the alien repository, right? So we already have 2 aliens here, and let's add these 2 aliens in our list. So we'll say aliens.add, and let's add A1, and let's say aliens.add, we'll say A2. Now what will happen is, if you want to fetch these aliens, of course you will be getting these 2 aliens, or maybe you want to add some more aliens, you can do that, right? It is available for you. Okay, that sounds good. Now once you got this constructor where you're adding these values, now we need a method which will return all the aliens. So what I will do is I will say public, which will return you the list of aliens. See, in this video we are going to only talk about this repository. How do I create all the methods? So I will say aliens.getAliens, which will return you the number of list of aliens. And now we can simply return whatever alien object you have. So we'll say aliens, return alien, right? So whenever someone asks you for get aliens, you will return this aliens here, right? Is that simple? Then you need a method which will, okay, so you need a method now which will return only, okay, maybe you want to return only one object. Maybe it is possible, right? If someone says, hey, I don't want all the aliens, I want an alien object with ID 102. That's possible. Again, we'll be seeing that. How do you send a request from the client? Okay, let me, I mean, just to let you know, okay, first of all, let me just remove this thing here. Okay, so first of all, when you talk about this list here, when you talk about request, so request will be for any type, right? A request will be for only aliens, which will return all the aliens. Maybe in future we'll be working on how to return one object by ID. So let's say if I specify ID 102, you will return that particular object. Maybe you want to delete alien. So you will do all those things with the help of this repository. Again, how to implement that in this resource, that we'll see later. But time in, let's focus on this repository. So maybe you want to fetch one particular object. So in that case, what you will do is you will say public. Again, this will make more sense after some time when you talk about how do you use that resource. So we'll say public alien, and we'll say this is get alien if you want only one alien. And the thing is, if you want only one alien, how do you specify which alien you want? So of course, in this method, you have to specify a primary key, which is ID in this case. I hope it's, yeah, it's ID. Now, based on the alien ID, you will fetch that particular object, right? How do we do that here? How do we implement that concept here? So what I will do is I will say, I want an object of alien. So we'll say alien A1 equal to, but how do I return that particular alien from the list? Okay, that's a difficult thing. Now let's say by default we'll say it is null, or maybe yeah, let's say null, and let's return that A1. But then how do you fetch that particular object from a list? So what you have to do is you have to say we have to run a for loop. We'll say alien A colon, and we will refer this this is to the alien list, which is aliens, and you will run to the loop and you will check if the alien a dot get ID matches with is equal to ID, in that case return A, right? So now what will happen is it doesn't matter what we are returning here. In fact, we don't even need this thing, but yeah, we have to return something, right? We'll say new alien. We don't want to return a null value because that will generate a null pointer exception. If we are not able to find an alien, it will return a blank data for alien, but at least you're not returning null. So what we are returning is, yeah, so we have in fact, you know what, returning null will be a good thing because in future we'll be looking at that as well. So if you send a particular ID we will return that ID and we'll check if the ID matches with the ID which is there in the list. It will return that particular object. Otherwise, it will return null, right? This is for one ID, one alien. Maybe you want to have some more. Maybe you want to have methods like delete, update. So you can write all those things here. So again, I will be completing this and then we will see how to work with resource. But then how do you work with at least this resource? So what I will do here is I will say, let me create an object of alien resource here. So I will say alien repository, not the resource, alien repository, and we'll say this is repo, which works with the database, and we'll say new alien repository. Okay, that's how we create the object. And then from here, instead of saying return aliens, we'll say repo dot get aliens, right? So now you're fetching data from database. Now it feels that you're fetching from data from database, right? So this, if you look at this alien resource, now we don't know from where you will get the data, but we are getting data. That's important, right? Now to make it work, what I will do is I will take my application. I hope there is no other server running on this machine. Let's run on server. You know, sometimes it does happen that I might be having some other server working. Let's see. Let's say click on finish and I cannot see any error there. Okay, everything seems good. So let's send a request for web API and let's say aliens, and you got your data. Now, trust me, this data is coming from the repository because there is no other way you can return this, right? So yeah, this data is coming from the repository, which is here. So we'll see how do you do other stuff as well, producing the resource, because in the next video, we'll talk about how do you produce some more resources and then how to update, delete, all the stuff are on the way. In the last video, we have seen how do you fetch data, and then we have also created this repository, right? In which you are saying if you want to fetch repositories, if you want to fetch all the data. But now my concern is, how do I create a new resource? Let's say if you have these two objects, that's fine. Maybe I want to create my own resource there. And we are assuming that this data are coming from database. Maybe you want to add data into database. How do we do that? How do we add data in a database? So for that, of course, you have to send a request, right? And when you send a request, again, we'll not be using this. Okay. So when you send a request, of course, there should be a method here who will accept your request. Now, question arises, for what type of request you are specify that you are creating a new resource. So what I'll be doing is I'll be creating a method here, which is public, which returns, maybe if you want to return, you can return. Let's return an alien object. And let's say the name is create an alien. Okay, and now this alien takes a alien object, and that's the amazing part about this, right? You can directly send data from the client and you can accept it here. Let's name it alien, A1, and let's return the same object. Okay, let's return the alien object itself. But then I want to add this data into database, right? So we'll write that code here. Okay, now when I say database, I'm talking about repository. Again, we have a fake database. Okay, we have to feel that guilty every time we work with this. So this should work with not get request, because whenever you send data, as we have discussed in the theory video, whenever you send data or whenever you create a new resource on the server, we always use a post request. So post is basically for creating a resource, right? So get is for fetching the resource. Post is for creating a resource. Put is for updating a resource, and delete is for deleting the resource. So I want to use post because I'm creating a new resource here, and then I will say okay. Now I want to change this link. What I want to do is I want to say create only when I say alien/alien. So I want to change my URL. Whatever URL we have now, I want to say aliens/alien for that URL. Now, so aliens are already here. And we'll again go for a path variable because I want to create a new resource here. And I will say that resource is, in this case, I will say alien. Okay, the path is alien. And let's say, okay, everything is working fine. Now it sounds good. So we are accepting it. We are fetching an alien and everything seems good. Now let's accept that data. So first of all, I will print the data on A1. Let's see, before adding that into the database, let's see if it is working. I want to print that data here. Okay, it should work, right? So what I will do is I will say repo dot there should be a method called create on the repository which will accept your A1 and it will add the data into repository. Okay, but hold on. We don't have any method inside this alien repository. So we can directly click that error here and we can create a method there. So we'll do that. We'll say create method alien, right? Okay, so we got this method which will accept your value. Okay, so how we should create that thing here? It's very easy. We got this alien A1 here, right? Now we'll fetch our list, which is aliens, and we'll say dot add, and let's add whatever alien object we have. So we'll simply say aliens dot add A1. Our job is done. Okay, again, you can imagine the data is going into database because we are not doing that yet, but it is going in database. We can imagine that. The important part here is not to work with database. The important thing is how do you handle REST requests, right? Now we have done all these things, but the question arises, how do you send this data? Now, when you're fetching data, we are directly using the address bar, right? If you can see my Firefox, when I say enter, I'm getting the data. How about sending data? How do I do that? We are not getting any form here. That's not our intention, right? We are not making a website here, or we are not creating a design for that. How do you send this data? Normally, when you talk about sending data, fetching data for REST API, we need some client application which will do this. When you make a mobile application, when you use all these things in mobile application, your mobile application becomes a client. When we use AngularJS to work with this data, we use AngularJS as a client. But unfortunately, I don't have anything here. We don't have a mobile application. We don't have AngularJS script. So we have to use a tool using which you can do all those things. But which tool we have to use? Now, luckily, we have lots of add-on tools available on the market. So, example, if you open, okay, let me just go back to my Eclipse. Okay, so if you right click this and if you click on this new and okay, so if you go here, there are lots of plugins available. Example, if I click on apps, I do have lots of plugins installed in my system. As you can see, we have Hangout, but one of the most important one is this one, which is called as Postman. Now, Postman is one of the tools which I use it works as a client. It works as a REST client for me. Okay, this is what I was doing in the somewhere else. Let's close this. So this is how your Postman looks like, but then how exactly it works, how do we send requests using this, how do you fetch the response using this, that's a different point, right? Again, the same add-on plugins are available for your Firefox as well, but then I'm using Chrome, so let's use Postman there. But then how to install Postman, how to use Postman, and how that resource will be created, that we'll discuss in the upcoming videos. It's time to explore what is Postman. Now, as you can see, Postman is a tool here, which is an app of Google Chrome. Again, for Firefox also, we do have this type of tools. So I'm using Postman here for Chrome. Now, you might be thinking, what's the advantage of this? So what I will do is I will just copy this link and let me just paste that in Postman. And as you can see, if I say, okay, where's that? Oh, we already got the, I've copied the wrong link or what? Okay, we'll say copy and let's say delete this part and paste. As you can see, I'm copying the list. The moment I say click on send, you got your response, right? So the same response which you got on the client, on the browser, you got the same response here. Now you might be thinking, what's new in this? We can do that on browser as well, right? Why you have to install a separate app? It's because if you expand this list, you can see we can send multiple requests. We can send a GET request. We can send a POST request. We can send put request, patch, delete, copy. So we can use all these options of HTTP, which is not possible in browser. In browser, we normally use GET and POST only, right? Otherwise, if you want to use extra two features like put and delete, which we are going to see in this course, of course, we need some client, right? Again, we can create our own client. If you want to explore that, we can create our own Java client, but then we don't want to do that as of now. We are focusing on inbuilt tool. So we got a Postman where you can send a request. If you want to send a POST request, just simply click on post and say send. You don't even change, you don't have to touch your URL. If you want to do that, you can, but then not required. So you can fetch data in JSON format, you can fetch data in XML format the way you want, right? But then how do you find this tool and from where to download this? So to download this, what you do is you have to go to Chrome and you have to open a new window. And what I will do here is in this Chrome, you can see when you open a new tab, there's an option of apps. So you have to click on this apps And okay, from there, if you don't find Postman here, you have to create a new, you have to click on this web resource. And in this web resource, you have to search for which app you want. Again, if you simply search for a REST client, there are multiple apps available. As you can see, if I search for this, I don't know how many options we'll be getting now. You can see we have lots of REST client available. We have yet another REST client. Okay, we can try all these things which is available, but then we'll be using Postman. So we'll say search for Postman, search for this, and okay, so this is the not this one, this one. So this is the app. So we don't have to focus on extension. We have to focus on apps. So in this apps, this is the Postman. This is how it looks like. So I have already added into the Chrome. So you have to click on this add to Chrome, where you will get the option, and you have to click on that. And you can see how many reviews we have for this. It's 8,286 reviews, right? This is a very famous client. It's not just which I prefer. There are lots of people, they do prefer this client here. So if I click on this, there are lots of description available. You can read it out if you want, and you can also read the terms and conditions if you want. But then once you install this, your Postman will be up and running. I guess you have to restart your browser after installing this. It will notify that. But then after doing that, when you open your Postman, this is how it looks like, and how to use this. So you will understand how to use this in the entire course. But then if you just to go for a quick glimpse, you have to select on this get request, paste your URL here, and click on send. It will send a get request. If you want to send a post request, just click on this post, and then when you click on this send, it will send a post request. But then when you send a post request, you have to also send the data, right? How do you send the data here to the server? In that scenario, we have to specify the body. Now inside this body, you can enter your key value pair, whatever data you want to send, or you can type your own XML, or you can type your XML or JSON format. You can, if you're sending XML, click on XML and type XML. If you're sending JSON, type JSON, and you can send it. So this is how you can use Postman. And so once we understood how to use Postman, how to install Postman, in the next video we'll see how do we send that data to the server, so that this method will be called. Okay, so that's it from this video, guys. I hope you understood about the Postman. We'll talk about this thing in the next video. Till this point, we have seen how to create a GET request and a POST request. Now you can achieve a GET request from your browser, right? You can directly go and you can paste this link. The problem starts when you have a POST request, because this is where you have to mention the post, because see, when you talk about your browser, we have your browser supports GET request, your browser support POST request, but maybe in future we'll be working on PUT request, maybe delete request. In that scenario, we have to use some sort of client which will send all this type of request. Again, you can use JavaScript here, but then we don't want to write any of the code. So I will be using a tool called as Postman. Again, we have seen how to use this tool and how this tool is made, or I mean how to download this tool and how to make it open. So let's try to run this code. So what I will do is I'll first of all run this code just to make sure that everything is working fine. So I will click on this and click on run button. So run on server. Again, it will take some time to start the server and set up the things. Okay, so as you can see, our server started and this is your request. But again, I don't want to use a web request here. I mean, I don't want to use browser, I want to use Postman. And in here, I will send a request for aliens. This is a GET request. I will say GET request and send. As you can see, we got the data. But now this time I want to go for a POST request, right? Now let me just verify what type of request I'm sending. So you can see I'm sending a XML request. Now, if you want to send a POST request, again, we have to use XML, right? Because if you can see, we have an alien where we have written XML root element. So that means we are expecting a XML resource. Let me go back to my Postman and I want to create a new object. So I will just copy this so that I will be having some sort of template with me. So I will copy this. And now what I will do is I will go for a POST request. I will say post. But this time you have to send a request for aliens, aliens/alien. And if I click on send, you can see we got an error. It says unsupported media type and then all those things. For that you have to mention the header, whatever data you are sending. So the data you're sending is not JSON but XML, because you are supporting only XML. And when you send now, again it says bad request. Because see, you are sending a request, but you're not sending data, right? You should be sending data as well. So in that case, you have to go to body and you have to mention XML and that page.xml. What I have to send now is I'll be sending the ID as 105. Then I'll be using a name here called as Harsh. And let me just use points as, let's say, 40 points. Now with this value, let me send a request, and you can see we are getting this data back. And if you can verify on the server, on the server side, we are getting this weird output because I forgot to put toString method here. My bad, because to print the values, we should be having toString method as well, right? Because otherwise it will print the hash code. So let me say generate toString and click on OK. Now, as you can see, we got our toString method there, and let's get back. First of all, you have to rerun the code. It's already done. Let's go to Postman once again and click on send now. You can see we got our data, which is coming from the client. Right? Again, you can write DBC code here and you can save this data in a database. The important thing is now you know how to send a post request. Now, just to make a quick recap what we have done, if I open that and where's the Postman? So if I open a Postman here, as you can see, we are sending data. So you have to make sure that whenever you send the post data on the server, you have to select post from here. You have to mention the URL. Again, you have to mention the alien as well. Then you have to say click send, but before sending you have to also send the data, right? So I'm using a raw data here. In raw data you have to type your XML, and then you can specify what type of data you're sending. So you're sending an XML type data, not the JSON. And in headers you have to also mention what type of data you're sending, so that's XML, and click on send. You can see you're sending your data back to the server. So that's how you send a post request. But then how do we use maybe you want to do something else now. Maybe you want to send a put request, how to update data, how to delete data. Again, we'll be saying everything in the subsequent tutorials. Till this point, we have seen how to create a resource, how to fetch all the resources. When I say all the resources, I'm talking about the aliens, right? As you can see in the code, we do have two aliens here. We got alien 1 and A2, and we are returning those values. We are also creating a new alien, but then as you can see, we have created one more method here, which is public alien get alien, and we are trying to return this object. Again, if you find that object, example, since we have two aliens here, we got 101 Naveen and 102 Aarti. If I pass an ID as 101, I need to return the object of Aarti with 101. If I pass 102, of course I have to return 102 object. Now, otherwise, if it doesn't matches, we'll return the empty object, so that will not get any exception. Now that sounds good, right? But then we don't have any resource here which accepts one, which returns one alien. As you can see, if you remember in Postman, we have seen if I run this, if I fetch all the aliens, it will fetch all the aliens. It is working. I don't want to fetch all the aliens. What I want is I will specify if I'm fetching an alien whose ID, we'll say ID is equal to 101. Now this is how we execute in server technology, right? What we do is we specify question mark and then we say ID equal to 101. So that ID represents your query parameter. Now this doesn't look good, right? In REST API, what you can do is you can say alien slash 101. Now when I send a request for 101, if I click on send, I want data for that particular alien. And as you can see, it is not working. We are getting exception here, which is one of our favorite, which is 404. In this situation, what we need to do is we have to create one more get method. Of course, we have to use get, which returns XML, which will be having get alien names. And let's copy this so that I will not have to type that once again. And this time I don't want to return a list of aliens. I want to return a alien, and we'll say get alien, which takes a ID. We'll do that in some time, and let's return repo.get alien when you pass an ID. Time being, I will pass 101 just to verify if it is working or not, right? But we have to make sure we have to check one more thing. When you say get request, you can see we have two methods here who's taking get request, and both this will work for aliens. What you have to specify is inside your aliens, we have to also specify alien. So I'll specify alien here. So I will say get request, not this one. I don't want to touch this one. Now here we have to use one more annotation, which is add path. In this add path, we have to mention the path. So we'll say if I send a request for alien/101. So if I send a request for alien/101, I have to return 101, right? This sounds good, right? There's nothing wrong here. Let's get back to our Postman. Now, if I send a request now, can you see that we got an object? Now this is for 101. Awesome. But then if I send a request for 102, this is where the problem starts, because if I click on send, oh, can you see that we got an error, which is 404. How to solve this issue? Now, of course, something might have struck to your mind that we can create this method once again. This time we'll change the path from 101 to 102, and that perfectly makes sense. You can create one more method here. But imagine if you have 50 aliens in your database, or maybe you have 100 aliens. Is it a good idea to create 50, 100 methods? Not exactly, right? So this 101 might change. Maybe I want to go for 102. So in this case, what I will do is I will say ID. Okay, but then this will not work. How can you replace this ID with a number? Now, if you want to replace this number, if you want to replace this ID with a number, you have to use curly brackets. Now, this curly brackets means this ID is just a placeholder, which means you can replace this ID with anything you want. Example, if you write 102, this ID becomes 102. If you say 101, this ID becomes 101. But then how to store that value? Because if you want to use that ID here, of course, it should be a Java variable, right? In this case, I will say int ID, and here also I will specify ID. So whatever data I'm getting here, the same data need to be assigned in this ID. But how we can do that? For that, we have to use one more annotation called as at PathParam. In this, you have to mention whenever you get a request, and if that request has a ID in that ID becomes this ID. This ID, which is here in the curly brackets, that represents this ID here, and then the value from this will be assigned to this particular ID, and that makes sense, right? This is how it works. Let's run this. Let's verify if it is working. For 101, let's verify for 101 first and click on send a request. Oh, it's working. Let's go with 102, send. Oh, it's working. Can you see that it's working for both the variables, or both the values? So for a particular ID, you can mention, you can change the value to 101, 102. Maybe you can have any other value. Let's say if I go for 105, I know we don't even have that. Let's click on send, and you can see we got blank values. That doesn't matter. What matters is whatever data you have in the database, you're getting that particular data, right? This is what we wanted. So yeah, that's how we work with this thing. In fact, instead of sending a new object, you can return null. And here you can check if it is null, you can send an error or something like that. But time it is working, right? We'll restrict to this. Okay, so this looks awesome. Now think about this. We are living in a world where we don't actually use XML. We do use XML, but XML is not the only format using which you can send response. Maybe you want to send a response in JSON format, and we have not seen JSON yet, right? As you can see in this code, whenever you fetch data, you are getting XML data. What if you want to send a JSON request? I want to say I'm expecting a JSON data. Now I'm asking my server, hey server, you are returning XML. That's great, but I want JSON. The moment you say JSON, not here, you have to specify. Okay, it is fetching in JSON format. What's wrong? Can you see that it is not giving you JSON? So even if you specify, oh, we have to specify the accept parameter. Is it accept parameter application /JSON? Okay, so there you can see we are getting error. It says 406 not acceptable. So this is not accepting a JSON data, right? What we want is, I want to return a JSON request. Now, okay, so you might be saying, okay, instead of using XML, we will be using JSON. But then if you specify JSON there, your application will only return JSON. It will not return XML. So I want to have what you say, something called as content negotiation. So I want this to, I want my client and the server to go for content negotiation. So when a client says, hey server, I want XML, server should say, okay, I will give you XML. If a client says, hey server, I want JSON, your server will say, okay, take JSON. Whatever format your client asks for, your server return that particular data. That's important. How can we do that? And first of all, even if you specify JSON, will it work? We'll see that in the upcoming video. So that's it from this video. Now let's see, how do we return a JSON format? Because see, till this point we have returned XML format, right? And we were happy with it, but then most of the people nowadays, they are using JSON. So how do you return a JSON value? Now you might be thinking we have to do lots of stuff. Not exactly. We don't have to do much about this. What we have to do is, if you see this produce annotation, this produce actually takes an array of XML, the array of media type. We are specifying only one, right? If you want to specify multiple media type, what you can say is, in fact, first of all, I don't want to use XML. I just want to fetch JSON. Okay, we'll see how to do both, but then let's focus on JSON. So I'm not producing an XML, I'm producing a JSON. Now, will it work? If I'm sending a JSON, and if I go back to my Postman, let's verify. I'm sending a JSON request and we got an error. See, there's no error with the response, okay? The problem is with the server itself. On the server side, we are getting error, which is 500. So when you say 500, it means that there's something wrong with the server. And you can see it says message body writer not found of media type application JSON. Now, when you want to send a response for JSON format, your Jersey says, hey developer, as a Jersey, I normally work with XML because that's what is default in Jersey. If you want to send JSON, then you have to use external dependencies. Oh, now that's the thing. We have to download some external dependencies for that. Oh, that's lots of work, right? But don't worry. Jersey also says, I have done it for you, don't worry. What you have to do is, in fact, if you go to the POM XML file, if you just go down and down, you can see we have dependencies for Jersey container, we have a dependency for this Jersey. We have one more dependency which is called as Jersey Media Moxie. And that is in commented state. If you can just uncomment it, you will be getting this dependency in your Maven dependencies, where you can find it here. If you go to library, if you go to Maven, and you can see we don't have Moxie as of we got it. I guess we have saved this file. Okay, so you can see we got Media Moxie. This is what we want, and the server is also restarted. We just have to add that particular dependency, and if you send a request, okay, it's sending, waiting for the response. And can you see that we got a JSON response? And JSON response looks much cool. Cooler than what you say XML, right? So this looks good. So this is how you return a JSON. But what if I want to send a request for XML now? Example, if I go to my get request, if I again go for get request here, and if I send a request, so this time I'm sending a request for JSON, but if I send a request for XML, and if I say send, you can see we are getting error, which is 406. So you have to mention what type of data you're sending. So for that, you have to again go back and you have to say, make it XML. But that's an issue, right? What if you want to provide both? So depending upon user, some people will say I want XML, some people will say I want JSON. What you can do is you can just put them in an array, and in this array you can specify two types. One is JSON, and the second media type would be it will be XML. So that depending upon what user asks for, if user asks for JSON, if user asks for XML, will return whatever user asks, right? This is what you call as content negotiation. So this client and a server, they are negotiating the content, what type of content they want. Let's go back to the Postman, and now I'm sending an XML request. It works. Now let me send a JSON request. It is JSON, and send. It works, right? So this is accepting both. Now, can we do that with this thing? This here. Let's try. Let's go with the get aliens. For all the aliens, let's produce both JSON and XML, and let's see if it is working or not. Let me just go back to my, okay, is it server loaded? I don't think so. Okay, done. Let's go back to my Postman, and if I send, I want to request for aliens. Okay, first of all, let me just go with JSON. If I send request, it works. Can you see that we got a JSON? So we got an array here. We got a JSON array. And if I specify XML, If I specify XML, you can say send, it works. Again, you can do the same thing for the create alien. Instead of sending a data in XML format, you can send data in JSON format. And I would leave it up to you. So you have to do it, you have to complete this one. Okay. So yeah, that's how you use JSON format. That's how we use this Jersey Media Moxie. So that's it from this video, where you return the JSON format. And for the further videos, I'll be focusing more on JSON, less on XML, because I love JSON. So once we have talked about how do you send a JSON request, and how do you fetch JSON data from the server, and if you can observe, we are fetching all the values, we are even fetching one particular alien, and then we are even creating a new object. Now the thing is, till this point, whenever we talked about repository, we were having this weird repository, right, where you are storing data in a static way. Can you see that? We are creating this object by ourselves. Now logically, what we should be doing is we should be storing this data in database, right? So when you fetch data, this data should be coming from database, and when you save data, example, when I say create, this should be stored inside database, and unfortunately I have not written any code for that. Now let's make it real. Why to work with a fake database here or a fake repository? Let's work with a real database so that you can actually feel that thing, when you save data in a database, when you fetch it, and all those things. Now question arises, which DBMS you are going to work here? First of all, we have to think about two things. The first one is which DBMS you are going to work, and the second one, are we going to use any framework for that? The first question is which DBMS. Again, you can choose any DBMS which you like. You can go for MySQL. So let me just write it here. You can go for MySQL, you can go for Postgres, and we can go for Oracle. It's your choice, the code will not change. Of course, the database code will change, but then your resources will not get affected. This will be same for all the different DBMS. Now, which one I will choose here? So I will go for MySQL because I have already configured MySQL in my system. Everything is working there. You can use Postgres, you can use Oracle, which you prefer. The only thing is, as DBMS changes, you have to change some settings. Again, if you have learned JDBC before, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's the first thing. So I'll be using MySQL. Now, will I be using any framework here like Hibernate or maybe some ORM tool? Not exactly. You can, if you want, you can implement that. We will be purely using JDBC here. No fancy stuff. Let's use JDBC because we are focusing more on REST API, not on the ORM tool. Once you learn about REST API, I do have a video on Hibernate. Just watch those videos also, and you can combine by yourself. I would love to see your implementation for that. But time being, let's focus on JDBC. Again, I will not be using any connection pool in this example. We'll be going with a simple JDBC concept because I don't want to confuse you with JDBC stuff here. So let's keep it simple. So first of all, I'll be using MySQL and I'll be using JDBC. Now to understand how, okay, I'm assuming that you know JDBC beforehand, but in case, okay, if you are not familiar with JDBC, I would suggest you to watch my JDBC video on YouTube. So even if you search for Telusko JDBC, it will give you a JDBC video. And so do search this on YouTube. And once you watch that video, you'll be having enough understanding to continue with this series. And if you know JDBC, that's fine. Let's continue with this. Now, how do we implement JDBC? So we have to implement those 7 steps, right? So I will make it quick. So first step would be I want to import java.sql.star. In fact, the amazing thing is we will replace this by our own stuff in future. Let's say is java.sql.star. Then I also need a MySQL connector. Of course, right? When you talk about your database, we need to use a MySQL connector, right? Now question arises from where I will get a MySQL connector. Now to do that, we have to go to our favorite website, which is MySQL, the Maven repository. So we'll go to Maven repository. This is a place where you will get your MySQL connector. So let's search for MySQL connector. The first link, click on that and just go down. This works perfectly fine. 5.1.38. I'm using this from a long time, so I already have a local jar file for this. So it will not take much time to get downloaded. As you can see, it is done. In my dependencies, you can find MySQL connector now. Now once we have done with that, let's get back to repository and let's continue with the steps. We need an object of connection. Of course, I will say connection con and we'll set it as null. Now I also need to do some more things. Let's not use this array as of now because we don't need any array list here, right? Let's remove all this stuff. In the constructor, I want to initialize my con object. So I will say con equal to driver manager dot get connection, and you can pass those three beautiful parameters. Again, you can do in your own way. Okay, there's nothing that you have to follow my step for JDBC. If you know something better, just go ahead with that. We'll say JDBC colon MySQL colon and localhost, which is localhost. Then the port number for MySQL is 3306. Oh, that's 6. And then the database name. Oh, which database I'm going to use, because we have not yet created a database yet, right? So let me open my MySQL. I was already working on some database here. Let me remove all this thing. Say create database, and we'll say this is for REST data or REST DB. Again, you can name it anything you want. So let me just create a database here, and let me create a table for that. So we'll say create table. What? We'll say table name as alien, and this alien will have alien ID. We'll keep it as ID itself. So we'll say ID as int, comma, name as varchar. Let's say the size of 20, provided it's not my name. Okay, because my name is very big, you know. If you don't know, that's fine. Okay, so I will say int ID int name varchar, and I also need a points which of type int. I got my table, which is that. I got my table, and if I select star from alien now, you can see, oh, what's wrong? I have to first say this, then I have to say this, and then I have to say select. Oh, what's happening? What's wrong? It says cannot create a table REST DB because database exists. Is it? Let me refresh, and we got this database, and we have to say REST use REST DB. And now is it working? Yeah, that's fine. Let's get this table and let's fetch the alien. As you can see, it is empty. Again, you could have insert this data from here, but just to make it real, let's get back to our code and let's insert data from here. Not from here, actually, from the user. So currently my database name is RESTDB, right? Once we got our database, we have to mention the username. So we'll say username equal to, for MySQL username is root, and for MySQL my password is 0. I know we should not be putting that as a password, that's fine. Once we got this three things, let's specify username and the password, right? So once we have assigned all these values, and I can see there's an error there. Let me say Control-Shift-O, it will import all the packages. What's wrong? Why? Oh, okay. So it says there is an unhandled exception. So of course, whenever you do these things, you have to make sure that you use try catch. We'll say try catch exception E, and in case if there's any error, we'll print system.out.println error. We can also maintain the log file. We can also do the print trace, but then let's system.out.println is fine for me at least. Okay, so once we got this connection object, we have to also say class.forName if you want to load your driver. So I will say class.forName, and you have to mention the driver name, which is com.mysql.jdbc.driver. As I've already mentioned, I'm assuming that you know JDBC beforehand. So if you still don't know, just go back to YouTube and search for Telusko JDBC, and we watch that video. Okay, once we got these two steps, now we have to replace this thing, which is your list, your get alien, with a Java query, right? You have to fire this query to get these elements, but then we'll be doing that in the next video. Let's go ahead. So what we have done is we have simply created this constructor where you have assigned these two things, right? We have loaded the driver, and then we got the connection object. The next thing would be, when I say I want to fetch all the elements, this is not what I want to return. I don't want to return something which is not defined, right? So let's create a list of values now. So I will say a list of aliens, and I will name this as aliens, and that's what I want to return here. So I will say array list, and we'll say add a list. Again, if we can use this Hibernate framework here, this will make our work very easy, right? But then since we are not using that, let's use normal JDBC. And if you know how do you fetch values, so of course we have to fire a query. So I will say string SQL where I will fire the query, and the query would be, it's very simple. So we'll say select star from alien, and okay, once we do that, let's fire this query. Now the way you can do that is by creating a statement object. So we'll say statement st equal to con.create statement. Okay, now once we got a statement object, let's import this statement object there, our statement interface. What's wrong with this? So statement from java.sql, and we got an error. Now it says it might throw an exception. So again, we have to use a try and catch block here. So I will say this will be included in the try block, and it will be getting over inside the catch block. So let's assign it there. Let's say exception E, and let's print error. Whatever error you'll be getting there, let's print that here. So we'll say E. Okay. Now once we got the statement object, it's time to execute it. So we'll say st.execute query. Now as you know, whenever you execute a query, it will return you a result set. So what I will do is I will say result set. I will say rs equal to st.execute query, and we have to import this package, yes, which is from java.sql. Now once we got result set, we have to run a while loop because we don't have one object, right? We'll be having multiple objects. So we'll say rs.next. So it depends upon how many values you have. It will iterate to all the values. And every time you get a value, let's create an alien object. We'll say alien a equal to new alien, and we'll set the value. So we'll say a.set alien ID, and this would be coming from the database. So we'll say set alien ID. We'll say rs.get ID from the first column. We'll say a.set name. It will be second column. rs.get string. We'll say 2. We'll say a.set points, which is rs.get int. It will be from 3, right? So we got this object and we have assigned the value. Now we'll assign this value in a list. So we'll say aliens.add, and let's pass a. So it doesn't matter how many rows you have. If you have 50 rows, it will add your 50 aliens. And once you do that, you will get all the aliens. Now this is how you fetch the values, right? Maybe you want to fetch only one value now. So in this scenario, I don't want to return all the values. I want to return only one value. Again, we can use the same thing, but this time we will not return aliens. I mean, multiple aliens. We'll return only one alien, right? So for that, we can even fetch this. We can copy this code and let's paste it here. Again, we can call it as code reuse. That's what we are doing here, right? So we'll say instead of having select star, we have to say select star where the ID is equal to whatever ID you have defined here. Maybe if your ID is 101, it will fetch 101, right? Okay, so same thing. The only thing is we don't have to use a while loop here. We have to use a if, because we will not be running a loop here because we don't have, I mean, when you run this query, it will return only one value. So we'll say if rs.next, we'll set all this. Okay, we'll create an object and we'll not add it. We'll return the same object. And to return the same object, of course, we have to create it outside somewhere here so that we can actually return it. And at the end, we'll say return a, right? That's the only change we have to do, right? So we have created this, we have fired this query, and you will get a result set. We just have to fetch. You have to say rs.next, and then you can fetch your values and you can return that particular object. It's that simple, right? And now you have to create, right? So for create, again, we can use the same stuff. We can just paste it, not this one. We can just copy this code. In fact, the catch block as well. Okay, just to make it fast, I'm just copying all this thing. You can do your stuff there. Okay, so the query is okay. Now when you say when you create a new thing, we have to create a string SQL equal to. You have to mention a query here. We'll say create or not create. Or we have to say insert into alien. We'll say values. Now question arises, for values we have to specify each and every value, right? Now, instead of using a normal statement, I'll be using a prepared statement here so that I can use question marks, which is placeholder in this case. And instead of saying statement, let me go for prepared statement. And this would be prepared statement, right? Let me import the package for this. It is imported from java.sql package. Anything else? Yeah. So we have to pass the query here itself. We don't pass the query inside execute query. We pass the query here itself. And we don't say execute query when you insert. We only say st.execute update. Where is that? Execute update. Right. So we have to say execute update. And we don't actually use if else here because we are not fetching data. We are inserting data, right? But where's my values? So I have to say st.setInt. The first question mark will be replaced by a1.getId. st.setString. The second question mark will be replaced by a1.getName. And st.setInt. The third question mark will be replaced by a1.getPoints. That's how you assign the values and that's how you insert the data. Now you think it will work? Let's try this. Finally we are running something which will be saving into database, right? And this would be exciting. Let's go back here and let's restart my server. I guess it is done already. No? Okay, let me just, yeah. So I guess restart is done. Let me just go back to my Postman just to verify it is working. And here I will say, I want to fetch all the values first of all. If I send a request, you can see we are getting blank because of course we don't have anything in database. Let's insert some data. So I will say post and I will go to body and I will say I want to send a request for alien and the value is 101 hash 40. And if I click on send, can you see that it worked? But then is it inserting data into database? Let's verify. Now there are two ways of verifying it. The first way is you can go to Mysql Workbench and you can verify there. You can say select star from alien. Can you see that we have our data here? And there's one more way of verifying it. Let's go back to my Postman and let's send a GET request for all the aliens and you got your alien. Likewise, we can insert some more data just to verify it. Let's say alien and I want to send a post request and also want to send a body. So we'll say we'll say Naveen and let's add it as 70. Right? Click on send. Now we got 70 Naveen in the database. Let's go for 3 and let's say this is Aarti and let's say this is okay. Let's number 60 and send. Let's verify. How can you verify? Let's say select star from, let's fetch all the value from database. We'll send a GET request and send. You can see we got all the data here. Again, you can send a post, you can send a JSON request as well. You will get your data back. So finally, we are working with database and REST. In the subsequent tutorials, we'll see how to update data and delete data. So now we have database, we have all the request response things. Now, if you go back to your Postman and if you try to send data, so let's say what I will do now is let's create a new resource. And to do that, we have to use a URL, which is alien, right? And then we have to send data as well. Now to send the data, we have to go to body and we have to insert a new object, right? Let me go for 104 and we'll say this is Mayank. And let's say Mayank has 90 points here. Now let's say if you have this data, now see, I'm sending this data in XML format, right? What if you want to send this data in JSON format? Is it possible? So what I will do here is I will just convert this into JSON because I want to send JSON, not XML. So of course this will not work. So we have to send data something like this. You have to say in double quotes, you have to mention the ID, then you will give a colon. The ID I want to send is 104, right? Then, oh, I forgot to put a comma there. And the second thing I have to send is name. And let's say the name is Mayank, and we'll give a comma, and then we'll have a points here, and the points would be, let's say 90. So I want to send this data. Now at the moment I click on send, okay, so you can see it is getting stored. So in this, it is getting stored and it is working, right? So that means you can send a request in JSON format or you can send a request in XML format. Right now, how exactly it's working? So what if I do, okay, what if I change this thing now? Let's say I don't want to, I want to specify something. Example, if you want to specify what type of data you want to accept, you can also use consumes. So you can say consumes and now produces something which will send from server to client, that is produce. So from the server, I'm sending data to client, that is produces. Consumes is something where your client sends the data and your server will be accepting it. So we'll say consumes, and so it only consumes, let's say, maybe if I mention the media type as media type dot application dot XML, so I will make it XML, and let's say it is working with JSON or not. So let me just make it XML, and I need to restart the server. I guess it will be happening automatically, but in other case, it's not happening automatically. Let's right click and say run as run on server. Okay, so now if I go back to my Postman to send this request, this time I'll go for 105 because we already have 104 there, and we'll go for a name called as Pooja, and let's have a point which is 80. Even those point doesn't matter in this case. Okay, let's run this and let's see what happens. Now if I click on this send button, can you see that we got an error? It says unsupported media type. Because what we are doing is we are specifying that it will accept only XML. And that's the problem. When you specify it will support only XML, then it will only support XML. That means if I send data in XML format, it will surely work. So we'll go back here and say I want to undo so that I will get the XML which we have written before. Okay, so let's set this as 105 and let's say name is Pooja, and let's say this is 80, and if I click on I have to make sure that I select XML, and if I click on send now, you can see it is working. So that means when you specify the type of data you want to accept, it will accept only that particular thing. Again, it's better to have both, right? A client can send a JSON data or they can send an XML data. That's their choice. If you want to assign both, if you want to accept only this two, not anything else, you can specify those two things here, and this will be a good thing, you know, specify both so that when a client try to send something weird, it will not accept. So it's better to mention the consumes annotation as well. So consume says what type of data you are going to accept: XML, JSON, plain text, what else, right? So once we have mentioned this, okay, it says some memory leak issue, but it's fine. Let's go back and let's go to Postman, and okay, so we'll say send. Oh, okay, we have this 2 times now. I want to go for JSON this time, so let's enter JSON data. So we'll say JSON. Again, we have to type the same thing, right? I should have copied it somewhere to reuse, but let's make it fast. So I will say ID is, let's say 106, and we'll say name is equal to, let's say in double quotes, let's mention the name, or we'll send this 106 in double quotes as well. Okay, now this will be, let's say Praveen, let's say points, and let's have a point which is, let's say 85. Okay, we'll keep that in double quotes. Okay, now if I send a JSON format, let's see if it is working or not. If I click on send, it is working. You see that? Again, you are getting data in XML format because we have not mentioned what about data you want to send, right? You can also specify by going to headers and say, hey, I don't want XML, I want JSON in return. So if I say send now, okay, where is our data? Is it coming? But don't worry, this is giving you JSON format. This is giving you JSON format. So that's how you send request, that's how you accept request, and yeah, that's how we use add consumes annotation. So in this video, we have talked about add consumes. So yeah, that's it. We have talked about lots of stuff, right? We have seen how to send a GET request, how to send a POST request. In fact, we have also included database now where you can fetch data using XML or JSON on the client side. The thing is, I want to achieve some more features now. So when I say more features, let me just go back to my database, which is MySQL here. And I have done some changes in my code. I mean, in database especially, I have deleted this ID 105 just to check something. And I was trying to update this name. So initially it was Mayank. Now I just renamed it to Mayu with the help of this update query. So can we achieve this too with the help of RESTful services? I mean, a client will send a delete request, a client may send a update request. How can we do that? Now, if you remember, when you talk about GET request, now GET is very simple. If you want to fetch data, of course, you will be using GET. If you want to create a new resource on the server, you will be using a POST request. Now, for update, we have a special type of request method, which is called as put. Again, there's a main difference between POST and put. Again, we'll discuss that in one of the theory video. But then put means put is something using which you can update values, and post is something with the help of which you can create a new resource. We have already used post, right? Now it's time to go for put. In fact, even before starting with the resource, what I will do is I will go back to my Eclipse, and here what I will do is I will create in the repository, especially I will create one method for update. Of course, right, we want to also go for update as well. So what I will do is I will copy this. Now this time we have to go for update. So of course the method name would be update here. So I will say update, and the query here would be it will be different. It will be update. In fact, I can just copy this code. So copy and paste. Again, we can call this as code reuse, right? So we'll say update alien set name. Now I don't know the name, so this will be question mark. So you can put this question mark here. I don't know the point, so it will be question mark here. And I don't know the role, the ID here, so that will be question mark. So now here we have to replace those question marks, right? The first question mark here is a name. So this makes more sense if you have a name. So set string question number 1, it will be name. The second question mark is point, so we'll make this as 2. This will be points, and the third question mark is the ID, so this should be 3. Right? Again, we could have written that in sequence. So let me just do that here. So let me cut this part and paste it here. So we are going in sequence 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3. We got all these question marks, and that's it. This is how you update the data. But then how will you send data from the client? Okay. To do that, we have to, of course, create a resource here. Now, how do I get a resource? Now, I'm creating a resource for updating an alien. So of course, we have to create a put request. So I'll copy this code and paste it here. Now instead of using a post request, we have to go for put request because we are updating data. So it should put, and the method name would be, let's say, update alien. So I will say update alien, it will update the data. But then update need to be done only when you have that particular data in the system, right? Example, if I try to update something and if you don't find data there, of course you cannot update it, right? In fact, I will check that after some time. The main motto here is I don't want to create the thing. I want to update the thing. Okay, so I don't want to create. I want to update. Again, there are some restrictions which we have to follow that we'll see bit in some time. But time being, what I'm doing is I'm using a put request. Now, using put request, you actually achieve updating. Okay. Now there are some people that do this debate that using put you can create a new resource, and using post you can update resource. First of all, to be specific, post is for creation of resource, put is for updating. But then you can use it anywhere, right? It will not make any sense because for you it will work. The only thing is if you have someone else and if they are checking your code, it will be difficult for them to understand what you have done. So let's all follow the same standards, right? So let's use put for update and let's use post for creation of data. Okay, now this sounds good. Let me just go back to my, I have to restart the server, it's already done. Let me just go back to my Postman. Now here I want to go for a, let's go for post first. I will go for a post request where I will create a body. Again, this time I will go for 105. We'll go for name Praveen and points 85. So these are my values. And I don't want to send this request. I want to send a request for alien, right? That's my URL for that. And let's say send. The moment you do that, you can see in our database, we got 105 and we got, okay, let me just refresh this code. You can see we got 105, we got Praveen and we got 85. Now I want to update this data. So I want to change this 104 to Mayank again. How do I do that? So to update, of course, we have to use a put request. Now when you send a put request, of course, for aliens, you will say for 104, I want to put name as Mayank. So we'll say this is Mayank, and we'll have a points. Okay, what should be the points? Let's go for 90 points. So the initial value is Mayu and 80. Let's go for 90 points and let's go for Mayank. Will this work? Let's try it out. The moment I click on send, and if I go to my database, you can see there's nothing wrong there. If I select star and alien, you can see we got 104, Mayank and 90. That's how you can update data. Now just have one query. What if you don't have a ID which you are specifying? So the request which I'm sending now is, okay, where's my Postman? It is here. So the data which I'm sending is, let's say 104. What if you try to update 108 or 107? Now what will happen? Because we don't have any data with 107, right? So let's say for 107, I want to change this name from Mayank to Chiku. That's his nickname. He's my nephew actually. And let's say points is 100 because as he's my nephew, he has more knowledge than me. So of course this should work. So the moment I run this code, okay, you can see it worked. Something happened. You are sending a put request, and let me just go back to my database. And if I select star, oh, this is not working on the server side. You got data on the server side. You can see we got data on the server side, and we have also tried to update. But the problem is while you're updating it, it is not affected because we don't have any data with 107. Now what is my intention here is, see, if it is not there, if the data is not there, it should create a new resource. So using put, I have two intention here. The first intention is either, okay, you can also return the data. You can also return the response to the client. Hey, we have not got any data as 107. That's one way you can do that. Again, we'll do in one of the video how to send a response code. But then let's say we have a scenario here where if the resource is not available, I want to create a new resource. In that way, what you can do is you can check. So while running the resource, you can check if, first you have to fetch the value, right? So how do I fetch value? So we can use this get alien method. Can you see that? We have this get, where is that method? Now we have get alien. So what I will do, I will check if repo.getAlien, and if I pass the ID, I will say a1.getID. And if I fetch an object using this, if I compare this with, if it is equal to null, okay, so if this is equal to null, we'll say, okay, so in case if it is equal to null, where is that? Okay, so if the object is not available, so when I say get alien by passing that ID, that means the object is not available in the database. In that scenario, it should create a new resource. So I will say repo.create a new resource, right? And it should work now. Let's try it out. Let's try. I'm very hopeful for this now. Let me just go to my Postman, and if I click on send, okay, something is happening on the server side. It's saying it is updated, but then let's verify. If I go back to my database and let's select star, oh, it's not working. What just happened? Okay, so it says get, oh, it will not return you null, right? That's an issue. It will not return you null because when I say get alien, I'm actually passing a new object. Oh, how do I verify? Okay, so what I will do is, okay, let's try to apply a programmer mind here. So when I try to update this data, and before okay, how do I verify if the data is available or not? So if I say, okay, so okay, that makes sense. So if I say get alien by passing that ID, if this get alien ID, we'll say get ID is equal to 0, because it will be a ID, right? It will be 0. So if I don't have the data in the database, it will return me a value which is 0. Is that the case? Yes, it will return you a 0 value. Okay, now let's verify. Let me just restart do the same thing. Let me just say send, and something is happening on the server side because my server is loading. It is taking some time. Okay, now let's get back to database, and done. Can you see that it is working now? So we got 107, Chiku, and 100. Okay, that's easy. So that's how you can update. That's how you can create. So if the data is there, it will update. If the data is not there, it will create. It's that simple. After watching all these videos, you might be thinking REST is damn powerful, right? Because now we can use all those HTTP methods to achieve this. We can use get to fetch the values. We can use post to create a resource. We can use put to update the resource. Now the next operation would be, you guessed it right, we have to go for delete operation. So if I expand this, you can see we have one more method which is delete. Again, using REST, you can use this form. You can also use the thing as well, but then these four are very useful. So we'll use delete now. Now, of course, you know why we're using delete, because we want to delete the resource. So what I will do is if I say, hey, I want to delete the alien with an ID which is 101. So when I send a delete request for alien 101, if I click on send, it should delete the resource. Okay, it should return the resource as well. It should also delete the resource. But as you can see, it is not working. Of course, it will not work because method not allowed, right? It's because we don't have that method on the server. Let's go back to server now and let's create a method which we'll use for deleting. So I will say public, and I also want to return what we have deleted. So I will say alien, and I will say delete, delete alien. You know, the name should be kill alien. That will make more sense, right? So let's go for kill alien here. I know that's violence, but then it will do here. So we'll say kill alien, and in this you have just have to pass an ID. The way we have done in this one, which is get alien. So we were using this at ID, right? The same thing we have to do there. So I will copy this and I will say delete kill alien by accepting this value, which is ID. And you have to also specify the request type. So okay, we have to also return the value, right? We'll do that in some time, but then we have to return data, right? So we'll say I'm going for a delete. I'm going for a delete request with a path alien. So I'll say path alien, and in this path alien we have to say slash, and we have to also mention the ID. So whatever ID you mention, the same thing we must have done for get, right? You can see for get alien also we are using the same stuff. The only difference would be instead of using a get request, you have to go for a delete request. So we'll say delete. So add delete, and here we have to return the alien object now. So how can we do that? So first of all, you have to fire a get method, right? So I will use a get repository. So I will simply use that get method here. So where's that get code? It's here, it's here, it's here. Yeah. So I will do the same thing. I will say repo.getAlienID. Okay. In fact, we could have typed that, right? Let's go back there and say this. Let's say alien a equal to, and let's return the value. Let's say return a. Our job is done. But then this is not the only thing we want to do. We just don't want to fetch it. We also want to delete it. Now deleting is very easy. You can simply say repo dot delete, and you can pass the ID. But unfortunately, will this work? Now before even deleting, we should verify if we have that data. So we'll say if a dot get ID is not equal to 0, then only we have to delete, right? Otherwise we don't have to delete that. So only when you have the data in a database, then only we should delete that. But question arises, do we have this method there? Unfortunately, we don't have delete method inside the repository. So let's create one. So I will click on this and let me create a delete thing. Okay. Now what should be the code? And I mean, you know that we have to write a SQL query. So again, I'm damn lazy. So what I will do is I will just copy this code and I will paste that stuff here. Now the query for me would be delete. Okay, what's the delete query? So we'll say delete. Okay, delete from alien where ID is equal to question mark. I don't know the ID, so I will just say ID is okay. Do this one as well. So I will say A1, ID would be ID. Okay. I just need to remove these extra spaces here. So what we are doing is we are firing a delete query, and then we are specifying that ID, which is whatever ID you pass, and then it will delete the particular ID of yours. Okay. I hope it will work now. Let's go back to my resources. Everything seems good. I want to delete a particular ID, right? So I will go back to my Postman. So I hope it will work. I will delete 101 and it worked. Can you see that? It is fetching the data. Oh, but the important thing is it working on the database? Let's go back and say select star from alien for this, and you can see alien hash gone. Now we can delete 102, 103, we can delete anything you want. If I try to delete the 109, which is not available there, and if I run, you can see it is not returning data. Of course, it will not return because we don't have anything with 109. We should have sent the response code, right? Maybe the data is not available. Okay, we'll try to do that. So this is how you delete data. Again, how to send response code, that's a different thing. We'll talk about that in one of the video. But then time being, you have seen all the methods of HTTP. We have worked with get, we have worked with post, delete, and update, or we just put. Time to make a quick recap. So till this point, what we have done is we have worked with different methods of HTTP, right? We have worked with GET request, we have worked with post, put, and delete. And you can see we have also used a Postman as a tool to send the request to the server. And everything was working fine, right? And we have enjoyed the videos till this point. Now, if you observe the scenario here, what we are doing is, so in terms of recap, what we are going to do now is, let's try to understand what are the things we have done. So let's do with the GET request. So let's say if a user sends a GET request and a user intention is to fetch all the aliens here. For that, we have written this method which returns all the aliens. Now, as you can see, we have getAliens method. Now, this method will be called whenever you request for aliens. So this path annotation will map your request, right? So when you request for aliens, this will map it and you can return all the aliens. But again, in which format you're returning them? So we are returning them in a list format. Now, you might be thinking, can you really send a list format to the user? Because user will be a client, right? It may be a browser, it may be an Android application. So of course, we have to convert this Java object into some format which is understandable with all the application, and that's where XML and JSON comes into picture. Okay, but the question arises, how will it convert your object into JSON format? So we don't have to worry about that. Now, if you remember, in your libraries, we have added one of the dependency. Okay, instead of opening this, we should be opening our XML, or not this XML, the POM XML file. Now, in this XML, we have seen there are some dependencies using which you can convert. And luckily, we have Jersey here. Now, Jersey says, hey user or hey programmer, you just have to give the object. It is my job to convert that object into XML format. But then what if you want JSON? So for JSON, we need one more dependency, which is Moxie. Right? Again, we can also use JSON, we can use Jackson if you love it. But Jersey says, hey, why you have to add extra libraries when I can provide you those libraries? So we are using Jersey library here, but you have a choice, right? We can also choose between JSON and Jackson, and also this one, which is Moxie. Okay, so we have added these dependencies using which you can convert your object into either XML or JSON. It's just that when you return, you have to mention what it produces. Now, your application says, hey, I can produce a JSON data or I can produce a XML data. Now, depend upon what a user requests for. If a user is requesting for XML, you will return XML. If a user is requesting for JSON, you will return JSON, right? Now, that is called as content negotiation. So you are negotiating a content with the user, and that is perfectly fine. So that is about your GET request, right? Now we also need a post request. Where is that? Here's a post request. Let's say if you want to create a new alien. In fact, what we have also done is we have connected this thing with database, right? So if you create a new alien, that alien will be stored in the database. And to do that, we have used a repository here. And in this, we have done with all the configuration. Again, you could have used data source here. If you have a different implementation for database, you can do that. Our application is, so this file here is not concerned about what about database code you have written there. You can also fake it. In fact, if you remember the first few videos, we were faking that we have a database, right? We were using some dummy data, dummy storage. But now we actually have MySQL there, right? Everything was working. You know, we have a post request, we can use GET request, we can use put and delete. So we have to do the same thing. It's just that you have to change this annotation from put, delete, we have post. And we also mentioned path. Now, why we need a path? We have also already specified path here, right? Now, to get that link, example, if I go to my Postman, and you can see we have aliens here, right? If I say I want one particular alien, or if I want an alien to be updated, or if I want alien to be deleted, let's say I want to delete this 102. We just have to go here, just say delete request and say send, it will be deleting. It will get deleted, right? That's how it works. So everything was working. So what next we are going to do? See, we have Jersey as one of the implementation, right? And if you are working for a company, there's a chance that you might be implementing Jersey or maybe some other implementation. Now, one of my favorite implementation for RESTful web services is Spring REST. Because Spring Framework is a new framework which provides you lots of features, right? If you implement Spring MVC, Spring Code, it's an awesome framework to work with. So what we are going to do now is we will be working with the same stuff, the same GET request, same post request, put, delete, all the same thing with database, of course, but with the help of Spring REST, right? So we'll start with Spring REST, and let's also add the database feature, but that will be with the help of Hibernate or maybe some JPA, right? So let's make this more exciting. Let's also add database and all those stuff. But then before going for all those things, there are some prerequisites. The first prerequisite you need to know is Spring Code. Again, it's not that difficult. You can just search my channel, or you can go to description area and find the videos for Spring Code. Those things you need, and that's it. Everything else I will teach you I will teach you everything step by step. In fact, even if you don't know Spring Code, that's fine, because when I explain you about those Spring Core features while in Spring REST, you will understand all those things. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. Now, of course, we are going for Spring Framework, right? The second thing we need is, I'll be using a different IDE. Now, earlier we were using Eclipse, right? Again, you can continue with Eclipse, but then it is always better to use advanced one, especially for Spring Framework. We have STS as a IDE. You can see we have STS here. STS stands for Spring Tool Suite, which is specially designed for Spring-based applications. Again, you can also use Eclipse here, okay? It's your choice, but then I will go for STS, and you can also learn that, right? So why don't you, let's expand our knowledge box, and let's also learn STS. Now, question arises from where you will download that. So I will show you the okay, let me show you. If you go to a browser, let's go to STS. This is the official, it will take you to the official website of STS, which is here, Spring Tool Suite. You just have to download STS from here. There's an option of all versions. You can click on this. If you depend upon which machine you use, it will automatically detect your OS and it will download that particular version for you. You don't have to worry about this. So once you click on this, it will get downloaded. You just have to unzip it and you can use it. Now, if you might be thinking, oh, we are using a new IDE now, we have to learn lots of things. You don't have to worry about that, because STS itself is based on Eclipse platform. So if you're using STS, internally you are using Eclipse, right? So let's start with that. In the next video, we'll talk about the first code with Spring REST. Now, when you open STS, it will ask you for the workspace you want to work with. Again, you can create a new workspace, or you can work with the same workspace which we were using for Eclipse. Ultimately, Spring STS or STS itself is Eclipse, right? Now you can verify that when you go to STS, and if you click on About STS, you will get an option. You will get that this works on Eclipse platform, specifically Eclipse Neon 3. So the version which I'm working on. Maybe if you are using a new version, it will be having a latest version of Neon, or maybe Eclipse. Okay, so if you remember, this is the project which we have worked earlier, right? Now, since I have this project in Eclipse, I have worked on this project in the existing workspace. I got this project here. Now, what I will do is I will create a new project. So, to create a new project, now this time we are going for a Spring project, okay? There's an option of Spring Boot in Spring. It's a new thing. Again, you can go with normal Spring MVC, or you can go with Spring Boot. Now, just to make these things easy for you, I'm going for Spring Boot, because Spring Boot says you don't have to do much of the configuration. In fact, if you're going for Spring MVC, there are lots of configuration which you have to take care. Spring Boot says, hey, don't worry, you can directly start with the project. And the way you can do that is by saying new. So I click on your project explorer and say new, and create okay, so I'm not getting the option here. So I will right click, I will say, oh, can you see that I'm not getting the option of Spring project here? So if I see, I don't have a Spring project option. We are using STS, right? So we have to make sure that you are using a Spring perspective. So if I click on here, you can see we have a Spring perspective. You have to click on that and say OK. Now you are in Spring perspective. Now if you right click and if you say new, and if you click on Spring Startup Project, now you can see we are getting an option of Spring Startup Project. Now this is basically your Spring Boot project. So if you click on Spring Startup Project, okay, it will give you the service URL. Again, we'll talk about this in some time. Here, I will mention my project name as Spring Boot REST, because this is not just a REST project. This is a Spring Boot REST project, and we'll mention the group ID. We'll say com.telusko. and we'll mention here com.telusko. Okay, everything is set. Let's click on next. Now here we have to select web because we are working with web, right? So we'll select web and nothing else. Just click on next and then click on finish. The moment you do that, you can see we got a project. Now this is a Spring Boot project, and you can also see S there. S simply means a Spring project, and at the end you have boot. This is a Spring Boot project. If I expand this and if I go to my pom.xml file, let's see what exactly this file is. If I go to pom.xml file, you can see we have Spring Boot dependency here, and then we have Spring Boot starter web. So this is a web project basically. This is a Spring Boot web project. You can also implement MVC here. We are going for Spring REST. Let's close this, and anything else. If I expand this main, if I expand Java for example, if I open this Spring Boot REST app, you can see we have a main method here, and you can, if you run this code, this will work. Now, one of the awesome thing about Spring Boot project is when you select web, and if you expand your maven dependencies, of course you will be getting some web libraries there. But with those web libraries, as you can see, we have Spring MVC here. With this, we have one important thing, which is this one. Can you see that? We have an option of Tomcat embedded. Now, what exactly it means? Let's say if you build a project on your machine, and in your machine you have Eclipse, you have Tomcat installed, everything is set up. Let's say if you are going to your friend's house, or if you have a different machine. Now, if you run this project on the other machine, what you have to do is you have to install Tomcat as well. You have to download Tomcat, you have to configure Tomcat. But Spring Boot says, hey, don't worry. Why we need an external Tomcat when I can give you embedded Tomcat? That simply means you don't need an external server. What I will do is I will stop the external server. You can delete this if you want. I will simply stop this. Now what I want is I want to create a URL using which I can access some data. Now we have a choice of creating a web page here from which you can access data, but that's not a good thing, right? We are building a RESTful web service where you don't have to mention a page. We can request the data using Postman. So what I will do is first of all I will run this code, and of course this will not work. This will work. Maybe let's try. So I will say run as. Oh, now how do you run this? Do we have to run this on server? No, this is our Spring Boot project, right? So whenever you want to run a Spring Boot project, you have to select Spring Boot app. Just click on this. Now that's your Spring Boot app which is running, and you can see in the console here, it is running. Let me just minimize all this extra stuff which we never use anywhere. And we got an error. It says the port is already busy. Oh, that's bad. Is it the issue? Yeah, that's the issue because I already have my Eclipse running in running state here. Let me close my Eclipse and let me just make sure that this is stopped, or maybe I will delete this Tomcat server from here to be on safe side anyway. So I will right click again. I will say run as Spring Boot app. It should work now, and you can see, oh, again we got an error. What's wrong? Who is using the port number 8080? That's bad, really bad. Okay, so what I will do is this will not be an issue in your machine. Okay, what I will do here is I will change my port number. In case if you are facing the same issue, you can change your port number. You can just go to application.property file and you can say server.port. Again, my intention here is not to teach you what is Spring Boot and how to configure this stuff. You can learn that in a different course of Spring projects, right? But then if you want to change your port number, that's very easy. Just go to application properties and you can change your port number to 8081. Now let's run this. This should work now. Otherwise, I will kill this project. I will say run as Spring Boot app. It's running. Oh, finally it is started. I don't know which service is using. Maybe the Eclipse is not properly closed. Maybe this one is not properly closed. So, but this is working. You can see we are using a port number which is 8081. Okay, now what I will do is I will go to my Postman. I will say, hey, I want to request for 8081, and I will say enter. We got nothing. Of course, you will not get you will get nothing, right? But what I want is I want to fetch all the aliens. So I will say a get request. I will say I want to fetch all the aliens. If I if I click on the send request, it should return the data. Okay, now how do I do that? It's very easy. We just have to create a class, and that class is responsible to return the data, the way we have done in the REST jersey, right? I will mention this is my alien controller. Now technically this should not be a controller, this should be a resource. That makes more sense, right? This is a resource and click on enter. Now how do you mention that this is a Spring project? I mean, how do you mention that this is a Spring controller or a resource? Now to do that we just have to use an annotation which is called as REST controller. So whenever you want to implement RESTful API, you just have to annotate it with REST controller. The way we have done in Jersey, we have used add path, we have to use add REST controller here. In this you just have to mention a method. So I will say method name is public. This return a list of aliens. Again we can write database code, but that will do after some time. We'll say list of aliens, and I will say this is get aliens, and this will return a list. Now to return a list we have to create a list first, right? So I will create a list of aliens here. I will say list of aliens, and I will name this as aliens equal to new aliens. But the problem is we don't have a alien class here. That means first you have to create this alien class. Oh, now I'm a bit lazy. I will, instead of creating the class, I will just simply copy paste this. Again, you can call it as code reuse, right? The same alien class, let me paste it here. Now problem solved. Is it the problem solved? Yeah, problem solved. We don't have an issue with aliens now. And I will simply return the aliens. But unfortunately, this aliens is empty. So I will say alien A1 equal to new alien. And I will insert some data for this. I will say A1 dot set ID. We'll mention the ID as 101. I will say A1 dot set name. I will set the name as Naveen, and I will say A1 dot set points. I will set the points as 70. Okay, that's my points. Let me just use one more object. I will say copy this and create one more object for me. This will be A2, 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 and this will 102. I will name this as Priya. Let's say points is 80. Once I got these two objects, two alien objects, let me add that in that list. I will say aliens dot add. Let's add A1. I will say aliens dot add. Let's add A2. Okay, so we have added these two objects. Everything should work now. Now, okay. So before running this code, I have this question for you. Will this work? Think about it and let's see the answer now. So let's restart the application. Now there is one thing you have to remember when you work with Spring Boot. Don't start your project once again. If you run this project once again, it might give you an issue because Spring Boot project has an embedded Tomcat. So it will not restart when you run this project. You have to click on restart to restart the project or restart the Tomcat server. Let's go back to our Postman and say, hey Postman, send. Oh, it's still not working. Of course it will not work because we forgot one of the annotation here which will map it, right? Remember the path annotation there? Here we have to use request mapping because you are mapping with request, right? So we have to say request mapping. And I will say request mapping with slash aliens. Or we don't even need slash there. So I will say aliens. So whenever you get a request for aliens, this is what you have to run. Let's restart the application. And let's go back to our Postman, and let's say run. It worked. Can you see that we got JSON data? We got your 101, the first alien, we got the second alien as well. It's so simple, right? So instead of using Jersey, we can also use Spring Boot. Now, the thing which you have observed here, we have added no dependency, nothing, right? In fact, we got the data in a JSON format. And that's an awesome thing. For JSON, we don't have to actually add any dependency. Everything is there. But who is doing that? In your Jersey, we have Jersey converters, right, which is Moxie. Here, if you expand this Maven dependencies, you can see we have something called a Jackson. Now, Jackson is pre-built in Spring REST project or Spring Web project. So this Jackson is responsible to convert your list of objects into JSON, right? So it's an exciting tool to work with. Again, in the subsequent tutorial, we'll talk about how do you use post request, put request, and delete request. So the get request works perfectly, right? But then think about this. If you remember your REST with Jersey, we have specified the annotation which is at get, right? Here we can mention that in the method itself, you can specify a comma here. You can say method and that get, or you can simply use @get mapping. So when you say get mapping, it means you are using a get request. You can also use post mapping, put mapping, and delete mapping for other things. Again, we'll see that once we continue with the videos. In this video, the most important part is the database connection. Now think about this. If you want to work with database, because I want to fetch all this data here from database, so of course we have to connect with database. We have to create a repository, right? So we have to say alien repository, right? And we have to specify all this thing. Example, we have to specify all these properties, and of course somewhere we have to specify all these properties where you have to mention your URL, your username, password, the URL, and you have to mention these methods. We need a method to find all the aliens. You have to mention the entire stuff here. You have to mention the entire this entire code, right? For one alien you want the entire code. For create alien, this is the code. For delete alien, you have a code, right? For everything we have a code there. But what if I say you have an easier way? Now, how do I implement that? Now, first of all, I'm not using normal JDBC here. Of course, we'll be using JDBC, but then we will be using a layer of it, which is called as a Spring ORM. Now, we also have a concept of JPA. Again, if you're not familiar with JPA concept, I would recommend you to learn about that as well. I do have a Hibernate playlist. If you follow that playlist, you will understand how exactly JPA works or how exactly Hibernate works. Again, you will find that in the description area. But even if you don't know, that's fine. We can ignore that internal part of it. We can understand the overall structure, what is happening. What I will do here is, first of all, I will add a JPA support in this project. And as you can see in my PathParam file, I don't have a JPA support. So we have to add a JPA support. How do I get that? How do I get a Spring JPA support? For that, you have to go to Maven repository and search for Spring Boot. Oh, what's that? Spring Boot JPA. Now, if you search for Spring Boot JPA, your first result, in this you have to make sure that you're selecting 1.5.4 because that's our project version. If you see, that's the project Spring Boot version we are working with. So let's use 1.5.4, copy that and paste in your dependencies. Now you got a Spring Boot JPA support. Now once you have added that, and the moment you run this project, even if you are not changing any stuff, we have just added dependency, right? Let's try to run this code. Let's say run as Spring, we'll restart the application. The moment you restart the application, you will get an error. Okay, before solving that error, I want to tell you one more thing. Let's say if you want to create a project and you're sure that you will be building a project which will be having a REST and JPA both. So while you're getting the project, at that time itself, you can mention that you want to work with JPA. So you don't have to manually add this dependency. Again, it's very easy. You can just right click here and say new Spring startup project, and you can mention the default stuff. Here you can mention I want a web stuff. So you can mention web and you can mention JPA. So you don't have to manually add a dependency. But let's say we have added this dependency, right? Anyhow, but what is this error? Now it says cannot determine the embedded driver class for database type none. What is this error now? What happens, your Spring Boot project is very intelligent, or you can say very smart. It says, hey programmer, I can see that you have added this Spring JPA dependency, but you have not specified the properties. Oh, Spring understand everything. So what you have to do now is you have to specify those properties here. But which property you have to mention? Now what are the settings we have to do here? So it's very easy actually. You can mention URL and it will give you a list here, right? And inside this list, you have to select spring.datasource.url because we are using a data source concept here. And in this we'll mention JDBC MySQL /localhost. The same property you have to mention in normal JDBC, right? So we mention 3306 / the database name. I forgot database name which we are working with. So if I go to my alien repository, the database is RESTDB, right? Let's use the same thing. We'll say RESTDB. The next thing you have to mention is username. So I will say spring.datasource.username. We'll mention the username as root. And I will say again spring.datasource.password. I'll mention the password as 0. And the last thing is the driver class. We'll say Spring dot, the same property you have to mention in any JDBC, okay? There's nothing new. We'll say Spring data source dot, it is driver dot driver hyphen class hyphen name. You don't have to by heart this thing, okay? It will pop up automatically. So we'll say com.mysql.jdbc.driver, right? So we have specified all these properties when you worked with Alien repository here, the same stuff. You see that? The same stuff. And that's it, our job is done, I think. Let's restart the application. Again, this will not be fetching from database, but at least the application should work. Oh, we got an error now. It says it is not able to find com.mysql.jdbc driver because we forgot to add MySQL dependency. Let's add that as well. Let's go to my repository here and let's say, hey, I want a MySQL connector. In fact, you don't even have to do this. If you know that you are working with Spring Boot, JPA, Web, and MySQL, while creating the project, you can also search for MySQL. It will give you the dependency. But since we have not done that there, let's do it manually here. I will say I want 39 version, which is 4.3.9. Again, you can go with any version which you love. Okay, we have added the MySQL dependency as well. Let's restart the application now. It should work. And you can see there's no error, right? There's no error now. But again, it will not work from database because we are not fetching from database. How do I do that here? So in this project, if you want to make it work with database, you have to go to your package and say, hey, I want to create a new class. Now, what if I say you don't have to create a class? You have to create an interface. You might be thinking, okay, we have to first create the interface, then we have to create a class, and then we'll implement. Let's see how it works. We'll say Alien repository. Okay, and we just have to extend, or we'll click on finish. We got the interface here, right? We just have to extend with one of the internal interface called as code repository, where you have to mention what type of class you're working with and the primary key, whatever primary key you're working with. So I'm working with a primary key integer. Now in your MySQL database, you have a primary key which is, this is not our table. Let's use REST DB. Let's verify what you're working with and select star from alien. Okay, so this is our data, right? Now this is your primary key which is integer. So we have to specify integer here. And now you might be thinking, okay, we have to define all the methods here, create, get, update, and delete. And then we have to create one more class which will implement in this interface, right? That's how Java works. But what if I say you don't have to do any of this stuff? Let's keep this interface empty and let's not create any other class. And in here, in this resources, we have to create an object of Alien repository. We'll say Alien repository. And we'll say repo. That's it. And here we'll simply write @AutoWire. Now this is a Spring core feature. If you want object, you don't have to create the object by saying new or Alien repository. You can simply write @AutoWire. It will search for the implementation. It will give you the object. You don't have to worry about this. And here, let's not create the object by ourselves. Simply say the data will be coming from the repo. We'll say repo dot find all. So we have to use internal method which is find all. Okay, this works. Okay, so we can typecast it. If it will not work, let's change something. Let's run this code. Let's see what happens. The moment you run this code, you can see I'm using a repo now. And oh, we got an error. Oh, it says it is not a managed bin. If you're using database, we have to also make sure that this is an entity because we are using a concept of Hibernate. And in Hibernate, we have to mention this as @entity. And in not just Hibernate, we're talking about in general JPA, right? So in JPA, we have to mention @entity and @id. So @id will give you, @id will make this as a primary key and this class as an entity class. Okay, so we are learning from errors now. Let's go back to our Postman and let's say, hey Postman, fetch the data, and you can see that we are getting all this data and these things are coming from database, right? So that's how this stuff works here. You just have to say find all, just typecast it with list and everything will work fine. You don't have to use any table stuff. Everything will work fine, right? Awesome thing, right? So this is how you use a Spring REST with database with the help of JPA. So let me recap what is happening here. The magic thing here is we are not getting any class which implements this interface and it still works, right? So this thing is done by Spring for you. Now there are lots of people, they say, hey, Spring is not that good. Now what is this? Spring is awesome. Spring is not good, it is awesome, right? It will give you all those extra features which you need, right? So that's the magic of Spring Boot. Again, once we continue with the example in the next videos, you will get more idea about it. But I would recommend you that before going for the next video, do practice this, because this is something which you will understand only when you do it, because it's the magic, right? And magic, when I show the magic, you will be thinking, oh, this is awesome. But the real thing you will understand when you try it by yourself. So try it by yourself, then you will see the actual, then you will understand the actual stuff.